It's been a big year here at Royale Masters. We've had the King of the Hill competitions all throughout the year. We had Summer Clash with tons of different game modes, but now we are here for the biggest, the big kahuna, the massive. This is the true Masters Duel, where we find out who is the best Clash Royale player in the Royale Masters universe. Hello and welcome. I'm Rich Slayton. That's my buddy Andrew Guy with me, as always, here to bring you a phenomenal tournament, multiple weeks, multiple top-tier players. Andrew, this, as always, is going to be some fireworks.
Oh, I cannot wait to get started, man. It's so crazy, and I mean this with the most respect. It feels like a World Finals warm-up. This is the last big competition, at least in my mind, before we're getting ready to go on that plane to Finland. There's a lot of World Finalists here today, and you know they're going to be there for the next month of competition because what do they need to do? They need to get ready for the biggest tournament of the year, and what better way to do it with one of my favorite competitions in Clash Royale, period. And obviously, for you guys to know what we're talking about, we're going to have to get into the format because this is no ordinary competition, ladies and gentlemen. This is a month-long competition with a massive prize pool. But how do you get there? Well, Open Qualifiers. There's 3 of them. One of them happened yesterday. They're going on all day long. That gets you to day 2. The top 16 players, the top 4 from each of those groups come on through to our single elimination bracket here today. That's right. However, when you get to the finals, we'll give you a couple more chances. There's also a wild card open. More on that later on as we get closer to it. And of course, the playoffs. That's going to be the top 6 in total qualification points, plus the top 2 from the wild card open. Double elimination on the playoffs, which will be really nice for everyone. And we all know how you feel about that. And all eliminations will be best of 5, which is great because only in Royale Masters duel format can we actually get to that best of 5 and still have cards available, Rich. And for people that don't know what the Royale Masters duel format is, this is what gets us really excited, guys.
This is really cool, and it's what allows, as Andrew said, BO5s to happen, because as you're used to in normal duels that we play in Clash Royale League, every time you play a deck, that deck is done. You can no longer play those 8 cards for that best of 3, which would make a BO5 impossible. But here in the Royale Masters duel format, you only lose cards that you win with. So you can see there on the left-hand side of your screen, player 1 wins against player 2. Well, player 2 can repeat any of those cards in our next game, but player 1 loses the use of all those cards where they just got the win. So in a best of 3, there's only going to be 1 deck of 8 that you are eliminated from if we reach it all the way to game number 3. But when we get to best of 5, you're able to play through multiple rounds, because when we get to game 5, you will only have gotten rid of 2 decks of 16 cards, just like you would in a normal duel's best of 3. So it gives the losing player a better chance to come back, some more flexibility, which is exciting, and it creates the opportunity for us to have duels in best of 5, and we all love a best of 5, Andrew.
Oh, absolutely. And then the best thing is if you play your best deck, let's say your comfort deck, and you go into a horrible matchup, you can run it back. And we might see players doing that on their way to this massive prize pool. That's right. Royale Masters really put up the stuff today. We're talking a big pile of gold, over $30,000. Well, right at $30,000. We're not going to say over because it's not 30,001. It's $30,000 prize pool here. Every Open Qualifier, which is today, you can win up to $2,400 with a $6,000 prize. And obviously at the bottom there, those are the qualifying points that we're talking about to get you to those playoffs, or in the playoffs, it will be a $10,000 prize pool, I believe. I think it's maybe actually a little bit more. But the whole point is that in the playoffs, you get to play for a lot more money, but you can win money along the way with our Open Qualifiers. $6,000 each, which means every single time we do it, $6K up for grabs, $2,400 to that first place spot. And Rich, we have a pretty stacked bracket. I kind of talked about it at the very top of the show, saying that there's a lot of world finalists. There's a lot of people that were right on the edge of making world finals. Now, I unfortunately was not able to be there for this last month's CRL, but we had some really big stuff, right? That's when we got in our locked in players, and a lot of these guys are in the mix.
I mean, this was a fun end of the season, and we're going to have a fun world finals. We see some world finalists for 2013. Ardent Toas, Mohamed, the defending world champion. Faust in the mix here this weekend. Ruben, Sosa, lots of world finalists. Inthryl up against Ruben in our first round matchup, was 1 match away from qualifying for world finals. You have Clown, who had the same thing happen. We have Eigor, who's a former world champion. So this bracket is super stacked this weekend. And of course, not only are they playing for those prize pool pieces, but for those points to make it to our overall final, and you see some names there you really expect to see when we get to our finals in December.
Yeah, and for that round of 16, we're going to be watching one of the matches, and then moving through the day, we'll be watching every single match on broadcast. You just talked about it, Rich. You said our first match of the day, it is Ruben and Inthryl. Now, I know there's a lot of other big names out there, but this is really exciting. You talked about Inthryl coming so close to making World Finals just a couple weeks ago, or last weekend. I don't know. I'm living in a time void. Crazy. We all know how that feels, but he's going up against someone who is a former world champion in Ruben. However, Ruben has not been the same Ruben that we saw back in the day, even though it was only a couple years ago. But the fact that he's back, it seems like he's in fighting form. This is really, really exciting. It's almost like we get to revisit and relearn how Ruben plays the game, because he has changed a little bit in how he plays the game. It feels like he's maybe a little bit more aggressive than he used to be. Not to a fault, but you know, back in the day, we used to talk about Ruben, and he was a guy, it was almost like a methodical chess player. He would just sit back and then make that one killing blow. I feel like the game's evolved a little bit, and it seems like Ruben has as well.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big things that started to hurt Ruben in his post-World Championship run was some deck predictability. He still made World Finals in 2021, but in 2022, he got a little bit too easy to read, and players are doing a great job of sniping him and countering him. One thing we've seen this year in his sort of resurgence, making it to that top 7 in points, qualifying for Worlds based on consistent performance throughout this year, is a little bit deeper, a little bit wider deck pool. A little bit harder to snipe him, to prep against him than it's been in the past, and that's going to be important for him not only here today against Inthryl, but as we go to World Finals when he plays against the best of the best for a World Championship.
And I think our format here in Royale Masters is almost just a little bit more forgiving, right? We talked about how if you lose, you can run that deck back. And that's a great way, I think, to prep and kind of mentally prepare for World Finals. Get that strategy in order. Or if you played a matchup wrong, like I said, or you didn't get your comfort with the matchup you wanted, you can play it again. So I think it's going to build confidence in these sets when you lose, where sometimes if you lose with that really strong Evo in the first game, you already can feel like you're beaten. You can always bring it back. And then talking about evolutions, again, I wasn't there for our monthly finals. How did you feel about Royal Recruits?
They're in the mix, but they're still second tier compared to Knight and Barbs at the moment. Both of those two still really take the cake. Mortar had some shining moments. We, of course, saw a little bit of Evo Royal Giant, but Firecracker was kind of lower down the list. Obviously, Skeletons might as well not have an evolution at the moment, but recruits have their moments, but the meta still is in a place where recruits don't face a ton of single target DPS, which is really where they shine a whole lot. And so you will see some of them. I expect we'll see some of them today. But with this Royale Masters duel format where you can repeat a deck when you lose, my expectation is we're going to see primarily a lot of Evolved Knight, a lot of Evolved Barbarians, and occasionally maybe some Mortar or Recruits or RG mixed in.
I know, those Evolved Barbs are just crazy. It's almost like they're a counter for every other evolution that is popular, especially Knight, and they do very well against Royal Recruits. And while we're waiting on our players to get started and for you guys to get ready to go, why not check out Royale Masters? We just talked about this open competition that's going on for the next month. You guys can get in it. You can get a part of that $30,000 prize pool. If you don't win in the week, you can still get those qualification points to get to playoffs. So go and join Royale Masters on Discord. Tasty Bacon and Dawson do a great job of communicating with our players all day long for that open qualifier. And Rich, maybe one of the most popular decks in the game right now. It's not Hog, Xe, NATO with Valkyrie and Rocket. It's a little bit different. Xe is showing up everywhere all of a sudden.
Yeah, I mean, with the rise of both recruits and, of course, of Lava, Executioner is just kind of having a resurgence right now. And is this the version that runs Lightning as well in the deck that Ruben's got?
I mean, what's weird about this is it's got Golden Knight and Knight, and usually it would have Lightning or Rocket, and then obviously Hog, and then usually I think Log is the other spot, but he's got Barbarrel and Golden Knight in there, obviously looking forward to this dual set. Kind of an interesting deck. Usually you don't see Knight and Golden Knight together, but apparently Ruben has a plan up his sleeve.
Well, certainly focusing on the mini tanks and controlling the action here on the ground. I believe that Xe NATO is going to be pretty much what he's doing for the air, unless he's got a building in the mix here. And now I think we're about to see whether or not he's going to go Hog. He might be expecting he's going Drill. So interesting to go. This is obviously Magic Archer typically in a similar construction here, but going for an interesting Drill deck here in Game 1.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we've talked a lot about how the Executioner basically became a mini Magic Archer, even though the Magic Archer got that weird silent buff for the King Tower thing. And anyway, I digress. Interesting deck, though, Rich. I get, you know, the idea of having the Golden Knight in there because you can at least get a 3-card cycle down, because this cycle could get a little awkward. You know, obviously the Executioner is the card that you want to keep on the board the most for Ruben. But I don't know. We'll see how this all comes together. It just feels odd synergistically.
And now Ewiz in the mix as well. Ewiz has had a bit of a comeback. We saw Ewiz a lot in 2v2 the other day, which makes a lot more sense when you have 16 cards to distribute amongst. But with how popular Inferno Dragon is right now, people are starting to run a bit more Electro Wizard, which is, once again, very fascinating. And that's going to help a lot here for Ruben, as the Executioner can certainly work against those Skeleton Dragons, but I think he was going to find himself often with the Exy distracted and confused. Still, at the moment, Inthryl putting a lot of pressure on with this very different take on minor wall breakers and cycle.
Yeah, it's just a little bit different. Obviously, you've got, you know, the recruits in there instead of what might be a Valkyrie or what has always been the Evolved Knight as of late. And then you have the Skeleton Dragons, which are a fascinating card. People have been playing them more and more lately instead of the Magic Archer or Executioner, if you wanted, or Bats is the other version. And another big connection. But honestly, Rich, what this feels like when I watch this game is just a deck that makes sense going up against a deck that doesn't really make sense. And you're seeing all the reasons kind of why. Like the Ewiz and the Executioner are kind of doing the same job, but one of them is doing it much better than the other. And you could say the exact same thing for the Knight conversation. You know, yeah. Golden Knight is a great card, but it feels much far inferior to the Evo Knight at this point.
Yeah, it's the interesting thing about this is that he clearly wanted to have an Evo in here, and Evo Knight is super duper strong. But the Evo Knight, you know, and he wants the NATO for the Xe, and the Golden Knight goes so well there. But I think you're right that one of those two needed to go the wayside, and often we see Drill having a building here. Having no defensive building is really giving him fits and starts against these wall breakers.
Yeah, I mean, I would have just loved to see something a little bit more traditional and get a Bomb Tower in there, or even a Tesla if you want to save Bomb Tower for something else, and get a Hog in there. I mean, I know Drill is what maybe Ruben wanted to play, but if you're looking at deck constructions and what works right now, I mean, even on Twitter, people are talking about how, you know, Hog, Xe, NATO, this new version is kind of broken. So anyway, this is an interesting game one. Ruben is making it a little bit closer here, 1164 on that top left tower to 681, but he's definitely having trouble dealing with these recruits plus wall breakers, just because of what you said, Rich. Really would love to have that building.
He has gotten himself way back in here, and if that NATO Golden Knight had connected, he might be in position to take the win, although at the moment, instead, he's finding himself in a bit of trouble. Can he get the Golden Knight? Because you see him waiting to make sure the Golden Knight's not distracted. I believe that was a dash that didn't get through the bomb tower, and now he's hoping for the Xe connection. Cannot get it, and Inthryl will take game number one in a fairly decisive finish.
Yeah, right there at the end, we saw Ruben go for an early Knight activation on the dash, and I think he hit Spear Goblins at the very, very top, like right at the bridge. And that's just one of those things. I think maybe a more seasoned, or maybe more in rhythm is a better way to put it. Ruben back in 2020 would have just waited. Get that Golden Knight, get those few swings in. You've already got a tank in there because of the Goblin Drill, and then try to activate the ability. But it made it really easy for Inthryl after that to, if you activated that ability right at the bridge, Spear Goblins come down, then I can just cycle anything there to distract your Executioner and keep that Golden Knight at bay. So, yeah, really interesting deck choice. I'd love to see the comments or be tagged on Twitter and hear why I'm so stupid. I don't know why that deck works, but I just feel like the Ewiz and the Xe didn't really make a lot of sense. The NATO with the Ewiz is kind of like another thing that really is odd. Like, you really don't see NATO and Ewiz coupled together very often, and it makes sense. You know, there's really not a lot of synergy there. Yeah, I don't know, man. I just would have loved to see Hog Rider in there instead. Yeah,
and, you know, looking at Royale API, I don't think that deck that Ruben played has been played in the last 7 days. There's no, certainly in terms of that matchup, there's no exact match between those two, so not finding a whole lot on that deck from API at the moment. And of course, you get pretty much every single piece of information you can get from Royale API. Shout out to the squad over there for giving us so much. But yeah, interesting choice there. And now we go into this game where Ruben's favorite win conditions are Balloon, Royal Giant, and Hog Rider. And Inthryl just got the win. Now remember, Inthryl cannot use any of the cards from that deck, But look at what he used. He used Poison, used Log, used Bomb Tower, but he still has NATO as an option. He still has Inferno Tower as an option. He has lots of things that counter the deck pool of Ruben very nicely, and so I like seeing Ruben here go for something different, but this might be a tough pickup here, although he is playing a log bait variant against no log.
Really quickly, Rich, just because we've been doing this for so long, how lovely are all these graphics?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
we got API on the side, we got the used deck in the top left with the cycle and the get around cost. I love it. I'm here for it. It really helps us do our job. And yeah, I mean, this is also another interesting deck here from Ruben. I mean, it's been made very clear, at least in today's matches, that Ruben enjoys the idea of an Evo and a champion being together, maybe because he really wants that 3-card cycle with the Evo. Twice now, it almost feels like he's kind of forced that situation. You know, the Golden Knight plus the Knight, the Royal Recruits plus the Mighty Miner in this deck. And it feels like that always is going to leave you wanting somewhere. We saw that in game 1. We'll see if I'm wrong here in game 2.
And a little more traditional overall, although this is an interesting construction for Hog Cycle. But arrows will certainly be nice. We'll see how much Ruben can abuse the lack of arrows, but we'll see Inthryl from a cycler's perspective. Does he focus on trying to get the Ice Spirit primarily on that skeleton barrel and then use the arrows to defend against the goblins? So far, so good.
I'm curious if Ruben's last card is something like a Dart Goblin. Usually with a skeleton barrel bait deck with a big spell, you usually have one more card that bait, and there it is, that baits out, you know, that spell, because you want to be able to have the skeleton barrel, and there it is coming down, to be just a little bit more effective. So kind of a fun deck composition here of Ruben. And again, I'd say, Rich, the only thing about it that doesn't make a lot of sense to me is the Mighty Miner in this deck. Usually it's kind of one or the other, and you can throw in like usually a lot of times they'll have like another card like a princess or something in there. So we'll see if that double ground unit works out. But as of right now, Ruben has not played a building in both of his 2 first games, and I wouldn't say he's struggling just because of that in game 2, but it just feels like it'd be nice for him in both of game 1 and 2.
You know, and I was about to say the exact same thing, that the lack of building's a bit surprising here, and it makes stopping these hogs very, very difficult, because not only are you not able to, there's no pull on the hog, right? You're not running Tornado, which he could have. You're not running a building. You're not running Fisherman. You're running nothing that stops a hog. And on top of that, your most doable hog counters all get shredded by arrows or fireball. So this is a really tough situation for him defensively. I think that Ruben needs to really get aggressive and try to win this game before he gives up too many more hog shots.
And you're absolutely right. That's what he's trying to do right now. Really nice cleanup. Does get a good amount of damage in. 1830 now to 1063. And here we go. Hog Rider in behind Evo Knight. You're going to have to use the Fireball to knock things back. Tower still locked on the Knight. Hog's going to take the tower here, and that's an easy 2-0 sweep. Rich, I believe our good friend Ruben might need someone to be picking his decks for him. I just think he needs a coach for this.
I honestly don't understand the deck picks here unless there's a specific set of snipes that he was going for here, which is certainly possible, right? There might be some snipes that they were trying to work, and Inthryl just did a good job of avoiding those snipes. But, you know, you look at sort of the lack of synergy and the lack of coverage, right? So back to the first deck where you had the Knight and the Golden Knight both, where you had the Inferno Dragon, or where you had the Electro Wizard, and then you had the Executioner together. And I don't really know what the E-Wiz was in there for. Right, and then you look at this next game where Hog is open. Now, I guess Inthryl not having Log makes Hog slightly less likely, but where Hog is open and you're running a deck with no buildings, where Hog and RG are both open. You're running a deck with no buildings, no really high single target DPS, and no way to pull back, and no way to pull anywhere. It just seems like these were fun ladder decks that didn't really have a target here.
Yeah, and again, like, you and I are big fans of Ruben. We know how exceptional of a player he is, but I'd even go farther to say mid-ladder decks. There's just something about it I don't get, man. You know, I'm sure there's a lot of pros out there that are watching this, a lot of the top-level coaches just maybe wondering the same thing. And if not, at me. Let me know. Let us know on Twitter. Let us know in the comments, you know, why these decks make a lot of sense, because at least from where I'm sitting and where I play, this game in the very bottom of UC. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I think if Ruben had a coach, I just think it would have been a little cleaner. I mean, you're not wrong saying that Hog is less likely to be run without Log, but obviously we still see Hog arrows, Hog snowball all the time. It's something that should have at least been thought about. And I do think the building and the forcing of the champions just didn't make a lot of sense. So whatever it was, Ruben tried something out and it didn't work out today. It is obviously single elimination here today because it's one of our qualifiers. But, a little bit of points there and a little bit of practice, at least as Inthryl continues to move on. I mean, what a September Inthryl's been having, considering with CRL and now here at Royale Masters taking down a world champ.
Yeah, I mean, Inthryl's certainly looking good. And, as I think about that matchup, I'm wondering if Ruben was anticipating Royal Giant as opposed to Hog here with the Log being out, right? Because you have the Mighty Miner to burn the Royal Giant down hard, and then you have Gang, Goblins, Stab Goblins, and Evo Recruits, all to distract the either the Inferno Dragons or the Fishermen or whatever you might be putting behind a Royal Giant. So maybe this was two missed snipes, and that's a decent explanation. Either way, Inthryl made some really good, slightly out of character plays here in these first two games. And you talk about playing at the highest level, making choices that are unpredictable for your opponent is a big part of it.
Yeah.
And speaking of unpredictable choices, take a look at some of these results here from round number 1. Faust going out in the first round. And, of course, his opponent out of the frying pan into the fire will be facing against Mohamed Light. Matea taking the L to Hugo, who will face off against Ardent Toas in our next round. Clown getting a nice win, also known as Kick-Ash, if you're familiar with him. Sosa, one of our world finalists this year, will face off against former world champion in Eigor. So only one really big upset here, I would say, in the first round, but we have some phenomenal quarterfinals coming our way.
Yeah. I mean, ours wasn't a huge upset, but it was at least cool that we got to catch it on broadcast. And I'm really excited for this next round of players. Obviously, a big David versus Goliath matchup there with Momo. And for everyone wondering at home, yes, you will see every single one of the matches moving forward. Adios to the players that were qualified and did not make it to round number 2. But obviously, there's a chance to come back next Open Qualifier. So
that's right.
As we move on through the bracket, yeah, I don't know. There's one more thing I guess we got to say about that matchup. And Ruben, we love you. Just to say that one more time. If you think you're going to run into RG or Hog, maybe potentially, just throw a building in your deck, man. Just one building. Just give it a shot. Bonk Tower is pretty good. Inferno Tower works out well against both those cards. But anyway, I'm done. Moving on. We saw what we thought we would see, at least in the sense of Evo Recruits. Evo Knight, those were the two that were played here. No Evo Firecracker, no Evo Mortar. I still think Evo RG is pretty good. And I guess Evo Barbs is probably still going to show up a lot today. We just didn't get the opportunity to see it here in our first matchup of the day. Yeah,
I think we'll definitely see some Royal Giant today. It's a little bit less strong than it used to be, and a lot of the meta has shifted more towards cards that do a good job of countering the Royal Giant, right? Evo Barbs, obviously, you can't directly fireball them off, so that's why you'll see some bigger double combinations on those Evo Barbs. Inferno Tower has become more popular, especially in this most recent meta with the rise of Golem, with the rise of Lava Hound. Beatdown counters are more popular, so that's given also Royal Giant another inadvertent nerf. So as we go here into Hugo, Ardent Toas, we're getting another look here, and Hugo running so far a fairly similar look to what we saw from Ruben.
What we haven't talked about is what's been dominating the UC leaderboard for over a week. It's Sparky. When will we see Sparky here? Because we all know that Sparky Goblin Giant, while it is broken, it feels like out there in the world, for some reason at the highest level of competition, it just doesn't add up the same.
Yeah, it's had its moment. What we've been seeing people do is a little bit of not just Goblin Giant Sparky, but Goblin Giant, just Goblin Giant Beatdown. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, without the Sparky.
The Dark Prince mini P.E.K.K.A version, which I actually haven't had the pleasure of watching very much, but the deck does seem incredibly frustrating to play against.
Yeah, it's it creates a lot of pressure, and it can take a tower very fast. And the fact that you're not relying on the Sparky and that big downhill push, and you can kind of move a little more aggressively in some places, makes it really frustrating to face. And we saw some of that. And here we're looking at potentially so far looking like a mirror match.
Yeah, and as you see the miners go out in both directions there, it just feels like it's exactly that. You know, I saw Morten playing this deck or a version of this deck, basically just miner poison control with Xe, because you now have yourself, what, 3 win conditions almost, Rich? You know, there's miner poison, there's the Xe lineup, and Evo Knight in and of itself feels like a win condition because there's so many things you can do with it, whether it's get it in front of your Xe or whether it's get up there to tank for your miner in the back, and then you can throw a poison on top of your miner for any of the small troops on top of it. It's a really fun deck to play. You know, the pros make it look a lot easier than it actually is when you get into double and triple, but this is going to be a fun mirror match.
Yeah, you'd have to spend so much elixir on the Evolve Knight once it does become a problem. And here you go, seeing a classic Knight going on there. And interesting, Hugo,
yeah,
that's a really aggressive NATO to be playing for that little amount of damage at this stage. And I guess he had enough elixir ahead that he felt fine doing it, but certainly that's 3 elixir to get an extra miner shot.
Yeah, definitely kind of an odd pull there, and now you see him having to spend just a little bit extra defensively on that log to make sure the Xe doesn't get a shot in. So that reach that he just did made it so that he had to reach on defense as well, and we'll see if Ardent can really punish him for that. This is kind of a moment that Ardent needs to take big advantage of, being up as much damage as he is. That Ice Spirit connecting evens things up and even gives Hugo the lead. I kind of wish that Ardent didn't take that, but I think he's going for a bigger push here.
Yeah, NATOing all this together. The log did a good job of separation. Very nicely played by Hugo, but this Executioner is going to really demand a little more response here. And the poison out early does not get the Ice Spear off the board, but still, the damage lead continuing for Ardent Toas. Hugo, opposite lane, big push here.
Yeah, you got to get the Knight on top of that Xe, but instead it has to go to the miner because he's worried about the damage. But the problem with that is there. Exactly. Okay, so luckily for Ardent, that Knight was able to put in just enough work while the bomb tower was still alive. Otherwise, that Xe lineup would have been absolutely game-breaking for him.
And you see right now Hugo doing a good job of forcing Ardent to spend a lot into his strong side. And interesting, just trying to get a little bit extra. Is that going to get a lineup for the Xe?
Oh,
and it is.
That's
What?
massive.
Wow.
That's game. I was just going to say, one of the more interesting things I feel like about this matchup specifically was, you know, there was that one errant NATO that felt a little aggressive, but it's the poisons. Ardent really took advantage of putting down those poisons throughout that game to give him the edge, and obviously it was only won by 700 HP. It would have been a lot closer had that one Xe lineup not happened, but you look at the use of poisons, Rich. Thank you. Oh my gosh, Tasty, you're my hero. Perfect timing. 7 poisons versus 1 poison. Do the math alone. That means that Hugo technically outplayed Ardent, but Ardent did the smarter thing, which is the macro understanding of, look, I need to get damage when I can. What guarantees damage? NATOs, poisons, and logs. Those are the only things that guarantee damage. Let me get those on the board.
The NATOs, the poisons, and did a better job of capitalizing on those executioners than we saw out of Hugo. So you put all those pieces together, and that's why Ardent is making his second back-to-back appearance at CRO World Finals, because he has started to put together a level of gameplay that is better than the majority of people who are out there. That's all you gotta do. Play better than the vast majority of people, and you could be a World Finalist for Clash Royale League.
Just be in the top 0.01%, kids. Yeah. You could do it. You know, and just to talk about Ardent a little bit, you knew how kind of hot I was on him in 2022. Yeah. I'm really excited he's back in 2023. At World Finals in 2022, Ardent had, I'd say, maybe some of the biggest struggles with the live stage. It made sense. He's one of the youngest kids out there. He's probably never traveled much outside of his home country. He was there with his dad, you know, they were both awesome. I am so excited for him in 2023. You even see it in his gameplay that he's matured a little bit. I can't wait for him to get back on that stage, the stage that he's already been on with that comfortability. And I think he'll do a lot bigger and better things here in 2023. I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, I think that this is definitely a good opportunity for him. And you talk about his matchups, he does have one of our other players here this weekend. Sosa is his first round matchup at World Finals. And Sosa's no easy out for sure, but he didn't draw one of those top names. He didn't draw Mohamed. He didn't draw Mugi in the first round. He didn't draw Samwell in the first round. He drew a guy who he matches up decently against. You probably put them in similar levels, and he has more live stage experience. So it's a pretty good opportunity for Ardent in this upcoming World Final season.
All right, hopping into game number 2. Ardent up 1. As you can see, all those cards in the bottom left-hand side of your screen are unavailable. A lot of great cards in there, but obviously Ardent going to have to figure out a way to get around Hugo, who is already running back some of the same cards that he used in game number 1, but changing it up a bit. Other Witch.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
She's always good.
That's not fun to throw a set of goblins directly into a Mother Witch.
Mother Witch plus Rage. I already love this deck from Ardent. There it is. Sparky comes down, and I love to watch it. I don't love to play against it. Let's see how Hugo battles the #1 win condition in the game at the moment.
And this is a fascinating... Oh, wow, not even getting the Firecracker shot off here. This is a fascinating choice, right? Because you cover a lot of what's popular in the beatdown side of things at the moment, right? You cover the Royal Giant. You cover the... Whoa, boy. Oh, my word. Sparky isn't going to get a shot here.
Game. The fact that the Goblin Giant pushed the Sparky to target the Tesla, I think that was what Ardent meant to do, and that was maybe some of the best placement of Goblin Giant I've seen.
This is a pretty early and insane blowout, and just as I was talking about, the really excellent pick here, that you run the risk of getting a hog the opposite direction, but Ardent had a great read. He goes, okay, I know that you're playing hog, and I'm going to set myself up into this left-hand lane and have my best hog counter in the barbs ready. And he just shut this thing down early. Now he's getting aggressive here, and Hugo can't play the right-hand side. He has to defend against these Evo barbs. So again, really just good understanding of the macro in this match from Ardent Toas.
Yeah, and there it is right there. I mean, that's exactly what you want for Ardent. You take care of the Knight. Firecracker does get some damage in. You can activate King there, and there you go. And, of course, Tower goes down. All very, very well played by our world finalist.
And I see T. Ripper in our Twitch chat saying, didn't Hugo just use Ice Spirit? And this is for everybody watching right now. Here in the Royale Masters duel format, you only lose cards that you win with. So since Ardent won game number 1 using the minor Xe deck you see on the bottom left-hand side of your screen, Ardent may not use those cards for this game, and if somehow Hugo gets a tower down and takes this game number 3, but that same restriction is not placed on the loser of game number 1. So very important distinction here, and we'll talk more later about why this format is great for this competition. At the moment, though, let's just enjoy Ardent's dominating 2-0 victory.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the only way that you can chalk it up. Just from the first moment of the Goblin Giant pushing that Sparky to the Tesla, the game was basically already sewn up. I mean, if you're playing Hog and Firecracker ever, you do not want to be down a tower early on, especially against the deck that has Sparky and the Evoed Barbs in there. So congratulations there to Ardent, an easy 2-0 win. And yeah, I mean, at least in this instance, it felt more of like game number 1 was really a nail biter. It was really, really close. There was a couple things there that you and I talked about that maybe Hugo should have and could have done differently. Game number 2 was a situation where it was kind of just an awkward interaction that I think Hugo wasn't expecting. Whereas in our first set of the day, it felt like decks that weren't working. These decks all felt like they were working, just maybe not in the moments that Hugo needed them to. Yeah,
I mean, look, Hugo did half the right thing, half the wrong thing in going opposite lane with the Hog Rider once that setup was on the left-hand lane. But it was a trap laid and sprung by Ardent Toas. Hey, you throw a Hog Rider that gets evaporated by barbs, and now I have a massive push in the left-hand lane. I have a huge concern for you in the right-hand lane, and you're short on Elixir. So it was just really mature gameplay from Ardent Toas, who was one step ahead in how the overall flow of that matchup should go.
Yeah, and I really like that he went with, you know, I hope I don't crucify myself for this, but like the Barbs version instead of the Mini P.E.K.K.A version, right?
Sure.
Because we see Mini P.E.K.K.A paired with Goblin Giant Sparky a lot. The Barbs coming down, not only was it great for the Hog, Mini P.E.K.K.A does, you know, well against Hog also, but it's the counter push, right? Mini P.E.K.K.A is so much easier to contain and control than those Barbs coming across the bridge. And, you know, the other thing I was going to say, and I'm never going to tell Hugo how to play because he's obviously a much better player than I am, but at least in my situations, when I kind of have an awkward cycle and someone drops a Sparky in the back, usually the worst thing I do is I go aggressive opposite lane if my cycle's awkward.
Yeah.
I think usually when I win those situations is when I go, all right, this kind of sucks. I hope I can defend this well. I'm not going to send anything offensively, and I'm going to spend all my elixir in the same lane and try to defend this push because their cycle's better than mine in this one instance. And I feel like that's maybe what happened here, because I also think the other scenario that could have happened, Rich, is maybe he didn't have Barbs or Mini P.E.K.K.A in hand, and he just ignores the hog, because he knows in a 2-tower game he can still win it. I don't know if that's exactly the situation, because we've seen, you know, sometimes that opposite lane pressure will bait out the elixir that you're looking for, but at least in Hugo's situation in that game, did not work the way he wanted.
And here we go into our next quarterfinal matchup. A guy that you may have seen before in Mohamed Light up against Zakas, who is playing out of Mexico, did earn 60 points at CRL this year, making it to top 400 in rank, but who is running 2.6 with Evo Skeletons against the GOAT. Yeah.
I mean, look, 2.6 with Evo Skeletons is the version of 2.6 you should be running now. Should you be running 2.6 in competitive play, period, especially against the greatest player that's ever touched the game? I don't know, Rich.
I do know.
Oh my gosh.
And,
oh my
wow.
gosh. Is this a 5K match? I mean, I'm sorry, but that was a hog fireball on a night when when an elixir collector's on the map. I mean, regardless of the elixir collector coming down before, after at the exact same time, why would you ever spend 8 elixir on a hog push like that?
I mean, I don't understand the fireball part of it. I understand the hog, right? NATO's out of cycle. Go ahead and do it. Pump just came down. The fireball is a little extra, and now free pump and a giant pile of rocks going the opposite direction. Now, top tier 2.6 players can beat Golem. Right there, this is a matchup that often historically has gone towards 2.6, but this is a different version of Golem right now than you're used to. And take a look at how this is about to be turned into a downhill problem.
I don't like to laugh. I've gotten myself in trouble before.
Sure,
but this just made 0 sense in every way that you play the game at the highest level. I mean, the over-aggression. I mean, look, hey, I will give Zakas credit here in the sense that Mohamed always says, play the game that you play. Don't worry about me being on the other side of it. And I think Zakas just took that and ran with it.
Yeah, that was a choice. 2.6, look, hey, if you there are matchups that if you are a great 2.6 player, you could potentially take here, but it just, the meta is not 2.6 friendly. And you're talking about a pro player who's certainly faced 2.6 probably, I'm going to conservatively say, 380 times in his career. Conservatively.
Oh, and, yeah, I thought you were going to go straight for the thousands. So a very easy game 1 win there. Mohamed Light playing a deck that he actually just made a video on very recently. Like you said, Rich, just before this game started, Golem is back, and my goodness, is it back with force. I mean, you look at this deck, no big spell, but the ability to turn the Chain Lightning, the Rage, and the Golem Burst with the NATO into a big spell is one of the coolest things that I think Mo does with this deck in that video. So, you know, obviously don't go watch it right now because you're watching Mo play live, but maybe at the end of the broadcast you have nothing to do. Go watch the video on Golem. It doesn't make me want to play Golem. It makes me not want to play against Mohamed Light playing Golem.
You know what's interesting is on paper, and this is again talking about the general population as a whole, not when you're playing against, you know, in the top 16
Give me the
echelons.
Numbers, baby. Hit me with them.
52-48 in favor of Golem here from over 1,600 games played. But that's amongst the general population, right? When you talk about top 200 gameplay, that probably shifts a little bit here. But this is not an unwinnable game for Zakas against anybody else, but you're just not against anybody else.
I would love to see them run it back. $100 Rich tournament of just them running it back with the opposite matchup, because I'll tell you, 52-48 is not enough to give a real edge. And obviously you talk to a coach and they go, well, you know, actually Hog has the edge at the highest level because of the ability to go opposite lane. Absolutely. I mean, I don't know if that's the true thing, but one thing is, if you're going to run Hog Rider and your opponent's running something in the same lane that doesn't work, all Hog Rider players will tell you, you have to be able to switch lanes. Even if you're still going to take that first tower you were focusing on, the opportunity to switch lanes and create elixir to come out so that your opponents can't build those big pushes is part of your arsenal. That's part of playing Hog Rider. So, you know, Zakas may be looking at the way he played game number 1. Obviously, this seems to be his comfort deck in 2.6, and he's just going to run it back in game 2.
You know, I'm going through his deck history, and 2.6 is nowhere in his deck history, which makes me feel like, and I could be wrong here, and if I am, please let me know, but makes me feel like this is like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? This is almost like protecting your ego, going, yes, I lost to Mohamed Light, but I played 2.6, so it's like, of course I was going to lose. Because I'm looking through Zakateka's deck history, and 2.6 is nowhere. In fact, he plays a lot of meta decks, so maybe this was a defeatist choice to go 2.6 twice in a row. I don't know if he has a YouTube channel he's making content for, and that was the choice here. But this does not appear to be like a comfort deck he currently leans on when he's playing most of the time.
Yeah, and I feel like that was pretty evident in the gameplay, right? In game number 1, I mean, I feel like someone who's actually well-versed in Hog would never spend that much elixir that early on. And obviously, one of the biggest parts of being a great 2.6 Hog Rider player is being able to recognize matchup almost instantaneously so that you know how to play through it, because that's such a big part of being a good 2.6 player is knowing matchups and how to get around them. Because 2.6, as you guys know that to play it, it's a really hard deck to be really, really good with. And usually metas evolve past it. So as of right now, not out of this yet, down by just about 600 HP is Zakas at the top of the screen. Mohamed Light coming here in game number 2 after winning game number 1, running into Evo'd Skeletons twice after running the arguably 2 of the best Evos in the game, other than, you know, not getting the barbs in there, but goes Knight in game 1 and recruits in game 2.
Really just fascinating choices here. And, you know, an alternative theory is maybe he's like, hey, if I take a game off of Mo with 2.6, that's bragging rights. I have no idea the decision-making process. All I know is that now
if you take a game off Mo, period, it's bragging rights.
Yeah,
I guess you need to start adding extra challenges to it.
Fair point. Fair point, indeed. And right now, Mohamed Light... Now, you got Mo playing Golem in Game 1, which he has shown very recently with winning the last monthly final that he's killer with Golem as well. And then going in Game 2, I think he's more known for, which is being great at minor wall breakers, but so far, a much better performance from Zaka in this one.
Absolutely. 1281, 1231, going in the same lane here. Still not opting to switch lanes at all with the Hog, but, you know, he's going up against recruits, so it becomes a little bit less appetizing. Mo does not get a connection here with those wall breakers, but Miner gets on top, and the recruit doesn't. With Ice Golem out, maybe he can make something happen with Bats on top of this Musketeer. We'll see.
And that's a Hog started very, very way in the back. Not a common Hog play. And Fireball's not going to get onto the bomb tower. Just getting the Fireball damage on the right-hand side is Zaka. 966 on that right-hand side. Does currently have the lead. Miner this time goes to the safe spot. Fireball to clear the cannon, but does not get Bats on tower one more time.
8 elixir in the tank for Mo here. Going to have to set up for another Hog defense. Maybe going to try to cycle him out with a Miner Ear after he gets the bomb tower down. We'll see. And there you go, Rich. Exactly the same thing once again. That really, really far back Hog placement. I think the interesting thing about the Hog placement so far behind, I mean, part of it is like maybe trying to get it behind an Ice Golem and Musketeer. But the other part of it that we talk about a lot when you see Hogs that far back is trying to double cycle them. And we're not seeing that at all.
And that's a connection. Yeah, there you go. Mohamed Light.
I don't know really what I just saw.
You saw someone play 2.6 twice against Mohamed Light back-to-back, which is, if I were going to go on my bingo card for Clash Royale, very, very low on my list of possibilities. But, you know, now I've crossed that off, bucket list item done, and I can move on with my life.
I think part of Mo in that game number 2 was like, whoa. When is the last time I played this matchup? Like, what is happening right now? Obviously able to take things there in the end. Big shout out to Zaka. You know, obviously we gave you a hard time, but you still made it here. You got to the second round. That's more than we could ever do, at least in our Clash Royale competitive career. So we appreciate you. We salute you. And you lost to the best in the world. So, you know, not the worst thing that could happen. Got those qualifying points. Let's take a look here at our bracket as we're halfway through our quarterfinals, Rich, with, I'd say, no surprises so far.
No, I mean, Ardent Toas put up a brilliant performance. You expect that as a guy who's getting ready for World Finals. Mohamed Light faced 2.6 twice, which you expect him to win every matchup he faces, but oh my word. Yeah, same. This is fun. I'm enjoying this a whole lot. And then now we get to the other side of the board. We have some really fascinating matchups, right? Clown versus Inthryl, two guys who have very similar stories from this year. Clown barely missing on points. He was very close. He was in the mix for most of the year on points for World Finals, and of course had a couple performances where he got that close to a golden ticket, and then Inthryl made that late push and nearly shocked the world and almost knocked Air Surfer out of World Finals contention with a golden ticket, didn't quite get it. And then of course our last quarterfinal matchup, which we'll talk about in a minute, is going to be a whole lot of fun as well. But this next one coming up, two guys who both made a very strong case that we should watch out for them in 2024.
Yeah, this is a really exciting one, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, at least with where they're at in their careers. It feels like this is probably the most even matchup maybe that we've seen today. I mean, Inthryl and Ruben also very, very close. You know, that was when we saw on broadcast, obviously, but Clown and Inthryl, exactly, man. I think Kickash and Inthryl are two guys that literally could be at World Finals. They're not surprising at all that they're this far in this competition. You know, I would have been very little surprised if it was them instead of Sosa, right? And no shot against Sosa, but I'm just looking at the people that made it through leaderboard points. Even Air Surfer, you know, Air Surfer was a guy who, you know, I sent him a DM or I responded on his post. You know, he was someone who I didn't think was going to make it this year, and it was really cool. I love Air Surfer. We've known him for a really, really long time. But Clown and Inthryl are two guys. I think I talked about them, you know, a decent amount in 2022, saying maybe 2023 is their year, and it looks like maybe 2024 actually is their year, because they are getting closer, right? If you look at where they were at last year in CRL, maybe how much we talked about them, and maybe like the difference in, you know, we talk about the 0.01% and maybe the 1%. It feels like they're getting a lot closer to that 0.01 than they were just a year ago, and that's an exponential growth, right? I mean, I know I'm using this in numbers that seem very close, but that is a very big difference in Clash Royale terms.
Oh yeah, the top 20 versus top 50 versus top 100 is a very different echelon of Clash Royale skill sets overall. Clown's an interesting person to talk about in this context as we get into his match coming up here next. In that Clown was, again, he was on the top 7 leaderboard for the majority of our season this year. And he just needed to defend that position going into the last month and just wasn't quite able to make it happen. But Clown didn't just perform well in CRL this year. He was also really solid in other competitions, in GKR, in Queso Cup. He had some great performances against Shot Kalalis, against Mohamed Light's team, with some of the team that basically is stacked with everybody who's a GOAT in Clash Royale, right? So he had some phenomenal performances both in and out of CRL. I really thought there was a solid chance of him defending that position for World Finals this year. He didn't quite make it happen, and now we get here a really fun matchup between two guys who were razor thin on that, and the big question is, will they be able to recapture the magic they had this year into 2024, or was this the peak? Only time will tell.
Yeah, and you know, Clown is just getting better. He just got that 36th rank on in the leaderboard. You know, it's the highest that he's gotten in our new format of UC. And as you talked about, you know, doing really well, ranked high up there in CRL, almost at 10K on prize money on the year. You know, all these things are just pointing towards a very good 2024 for Kickash/Clown. Inthryl, top of your screen, and the aforementioned player at the bottom running lava for the first time here today, which means we'll probably see some evoed barbs as well. And top of your screen looking like, I don't know, Sparky? Oh, no.
Yeah, it might just be the Goblin Giant
deck. It is Sparky. Yeah, it might be the one we were talking about, right? We'll find out.
He's going to take a balloon shot here, not going to NATO this, just going to go ahead and make the downhill push. Fireball out of Psycho, so these bars will handle the Goblin Giant very easily.
That, and good call there, Rich. We are getting the beatdown version of it. Those spears on the back of the Goblin Giant are the most frustrating thing about that card. What a great play there by Inthryl to take the balloon shot, but now you can see he's kind of just got Clown on his back foot because the Goblin Giant spears were able to do enough to that balloon to where he didn't have to spend any more. And
he might, no, he decides not. I was saying he might rage this, but with the Inferno Dragon, not going to risk going that low on Elixir as he needs to play some defense here. Inthryl, the pacing of this is going to be very interesting. At some point, he's going to make the choice to go hard and push to take a tower. The question just is when.
Yeah, I'm excited to see him play this. You know, you might have heard me talk earlier, for those that are listening and watching, that I haven't really seen this deck be played at high level. And obviously this is a very unique matchup in and of like the fact that the minions are going to have to put in a lot of work against those air cards. Yeah, just excited to see this go. And those Evo Barbs going to do really, really well against that Prince. But the Fireball was locked, loaded, ready to go. You love to see it, man.
And there you go. Tower not quite down, but effectively so on the right-hand side. That 18 HP is really annoying for Inthryl because he has to spend on it. Now he has to spend at least 2 elixir, unless this pig can go coast to coast, which it can't. So he has to drop a Rage or something on there, and that could be all the difference.
Yeah, really, it really can. And there it is. There's the Rage you talked about, Rich, with only 12 seconds remaining. It's obviously the only choice you can really make there. But does that mess up your cycle? Does it mess up your elixir situation? We're about to find out here as Boom Clown, Kick Ash, making work down the left-hand lane.
Oh, Boom Clown. That warms my heart. So here we go.
See
Goblin Giant.
come down. No,
And
just goes right in the pocket there.
Look at this slotted loon. There's nothing there.
I mean,
wow.
Nothing at all. That's game right there. Oof. Beautiful, beautiful play. Doesn't actually end up taking the tower. Inferno is there, but yeah, it was just like, what are you going to play? There's absolutely nothing. Now just needs one more fireball. Inthryl can feel the pressure. He's going to go in for a full send.
Does he have the rage to do this in time? But the barbs come down. He can't get it done. And this will be just a fireball cleanup here. Clown with the brilliant, I don't know if we have replay available today, but that's the play I'd love to see, because he looked at the board and he said, oh, every single piece of DPS on the board is distracted right now and put in different directions, and just slid that balloon right through. Very opportunistic heads-up play. Great recognition by Clown in that moment.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at a 2-tower game with 3 balloons dropped. So that is really a lot about, you know, Clown's decision-making with his big win con there. And yeah, that balloon in the pocket was absolutely brilliant. Mother Witch distracted. You know, we even see Inthryl having to drop a defensive rage, even though nothing was shooting at the balloon. It was just to get them to start getting on top of the balloon.
Yeah.
Minions weren't there. Really, really, really nice there from Kick Ash to steal what, I mean, honestly, it felt like almost a steal there of game of that second tower. It was beautiful. You love to see it.
Well, you talk about it. Let's go ahead and take a look at the moment. That replay we do have ready to go. And I want to talk about this after I mentioned that he had to play that rage. You see the rage ticking away, right? So he had to play that rage. That's 2 elixir. He has less in this situation. That if that tower had been down, we don't even know if Clown would have built the same push here. Either way, Inthryl had to play that 2 elixir, and he goes in here without that. And now let's watch the way he sets up this defense. The Lava Hound tanking for everything here, right? And then you see the minions played high, trying to get on the balloon in the back, but instead they don't get anywhere near it. The Inferno Dragon picks everything up, and that loon is able to just sneak right through to tower. And just some inopportune plays, and you gotta wonder how much of that comes down to, I have to spend 2 elixir on this 18 HP.
I know those towers that are standing on stilts can be so frustrating. That 2 elixir, who knows where it could have been used. I mean, Inthryl had the right idea, right? Just like you called it on there, he did get the minions up high to get on top of that balloon. It was almost like he predicted the balloon coming down, but it's almost the positioning of the minions was incorrect. I don't know if they needed to be closer to his tower, but he was worried about them getting spelled off the board. And honestly, it was just because of the perfect push that Clown built. You know, those minions coming down just got distracted by the Inferno. You know, they just weren't there to get to the balloon. Great plays there. Great recognition as we're getting ready for game number 2. And I also like what we saw out of Clown, at least in terms of what he picked in game number 1. We haven't seen anyone go to the skies yet. You know, he's using cards that leave him very, very open for this next game of the highest or most popular decks in the meta. I mean, Barbs are out, but Knight's still in. And if I won game 1 and I still have Evo Knight, I'm feeling pretty dang good.
Yeah, I'm wondering now with the Inferno Dragon being out, and then on the other side of things, the Fireball being out, you have a couple of really interesting options, right? Inferno Dragon has been one of the more popular. Golem certainly a big possibility here. And the other possibility is, a card that, if you look at those community votes for nerfs, could be in trouble coming up soon. And that is as he goes some sort of Fireball bait here and play some Magic Archer, try to abuse that against the lack of Fireball. So we'll see what happens.
All right, well, Cycled Log means that a free Goblin gang can come down. Inthryl going to Skelly King. Been seeing a lot more Skeleton King these days. I'm not mad about it.
Yeah, it just has a lot of stuff going for it right now. You have a lot of these kind of cards, right? Tombstones are in the game a lot right now. A lot of different squishy goblins are in the game a lot right now. So certainly gets its value, and not to mention that it's between like it's charging up its ability and the splash damage, just in a good spot.
Yeah, and that 3-card cycle, when you pair it with something like the recruits, it's really, really great. It only takes one, obviously, to get the Royal Evoed recruits on the board, and then you get that down to a 3-card cycle, and you find yourself in a really, really good spot. We're looking like Monk plus Hog. I actually really, really like this deck, even if I'm not great with it. We'll see how it stacks up, though. Not a lot of great options for that Monk reflectability, but, you know, Spears and Skelly Drags will give you a little.
And Clown getting ready to go in. Yep, there he goes. Hog in front of this Firecracker, just forcing some more expenditure, and knows, like we saw earlier in a very similar matchup, that this deck doesn't have a lot of great ways to stop Hog Rider. So happy to go in, and he knows he's going to get a couple of shots, or he's either going to get a couple of shots or force some over expenditure every single time.
And these Firecrackers, I feel like, is going to be part of the key to success for Clown, especially if he can get a 3-card cycle going with the Monk in the back. And that's an unfortunate shot there from the Firecrackers. Have to eat those 2 wall breakers. Not the end of the world because it's the healthier tower. But getting that Monk down and getting a 3-card cycle out with the Hogs a-flying and being able to stack the Firecrackers is, I think, going to be a part of really winning this game with Inthryl. I mean, obviously he has the arrows, but that only takes care of 1. The Firecrackers stacking up can be really, really frustrating, especially when you have things like recruits and skeleton dragons to take care of.
Miner into the right-hand side goes to the inside, looking to actually pull the bomb tower focus away from the Royal recruits for a moment. Smart move, trying to clear some paths, and the Skelly Dragons won't end up being much of a problem, but now look at how this opens up some work for the wall breakers on the right and forces another bomb tower cycle out of Clown.
Another bomb tower cycle. I'm so glad you said that, because that's the 3rd bomb tower we saw come down on that one defense. And 1754, 1519, I wouldn't feel great about that if I was Clown. You know, he really, really had to extend himself to get all that taken care of. Not too far behind, but he is still working in that same lane. I'm curious to see if he ever switches up or if he's just going to try to beat down in this one side.
And here we go, one more time. Hog can just slide on through. The log easily clears that path, and 2 shots with nothing you can really do about it.
Yeah, and now you're at a position where you can't not go to that tower if you're Clown. Also, if you're Inthryl, you really have to worry about the aggressive Firecrackers. When is a Hog Firecracker push going to come in? Something you always have to think about.
And going to clear that off with the arrows fairly easily. Monk sets up into the strong side, or into the attacking side for Clown, and Inthryl is trying to find a moment, going all in on this right-hand lane. Miner going to go to the Firecracker one more time. He has not had a great job of getting the Firecracker off the board. This is a lot of damage. This is a lot of damage. Oh my word. I mean, wow.
I was just going to say, the ace up the sleeve. Where did the Mother Witch come from? The 8th card played finally comes out. 122 remaining on the tower. Wallbreaker's in on that right-hand side. And the Goblin, oh wow, that King Tower. I forgot the King Tower was active. That was going to be the game.
Can he pick up this Miner here? Electro Spirit does it. Firecracker in, but she gets evaporated.
Wow.
GG, well played. And we are finally going to a game 3 here today, folks.
What a great catch there, too, by Clown at the end. He gets the E-Spirit down, gets the Firecracker down. Inthryl knows that's the only thing he has available, goes in with the arrows, takes the game. Beautiful, beautiful plays there. Obviously, the Earthquake was not able to work in the mix, but Rich, look at the right-hand side of the screen. 1 Mother Witch, the 8th card, deep in overtime, and she just gets you. Oh, yes. I hate her. I love her.
She was great, and I have to see a question from Surgical Wizard in the YouTube chat here for this one, asking, why are those cards not available? Well, again, we are in the Royale Masters duel format, so our traditional duel format, both players play a deck in Game 1, and the deck from each player is unavailable for Game 2 and, if necessary, Game 3. Same thing with the Game 2 deck. You cannot repeat any cards. Royale Masters has a little tweak on that duel format where you cannot repeat cards if you win a game with them, but if you lose a game, you can repeat cards. So when we go into our next match, you're going to see 1 full deck out for Clown. that's going to be the all the different cards that came in that Lava Loon deck. And you're going to see one full deck out for Inthryl, which is the 8 cards you just saw him win with. So we'll be able to go through all those as we see them on screen when we get in. But a little tweak on the duel format for Royale Masters, which not only creates some variety, but as you'll see later today and later in the competition, allows us to play duels for best of 5, which is a whole lot of fun.
I love best of 5 duels. We get to do it so rarely. Obviously, if every game was best of 5 duels, I'd be pulling my hair out 7 hours into the broadcast, but that's not the situation. We're talking in the qualifiers, it's only the finals, and then in the playoffs, it is only elimination matches. So you guys will get to see what the best players in the world do when they have to get all the way to game 4, all the way to game 5. It's really, really a treat at that point because you really see how much the coaching and the mental gymnastics, all that have to happen in such a short window, which is actually what's happening right now, just for this best of 3. It's the first time we're getting to see one on broadcast today. We saw some really great gameplay from both of these guys, exactly like we were talking about, man. It felt like on paper, this is one of the closest matchups we even had in the entire tournament, not just in the bracket, but of all 16 players that came through. And we're really seeing it here. And it's not done by missteps really by players. It's done by some really, really fun and excellent gameplay. That Mother Witch at the end, you know, when you look at what Clown did with that balloon in game number 1, this is some top tier stuff. I'm glad we're in game 3.
Yeah, and that's I think the big point to make here is that both of these players made late game choices that won the game. And just sitting on that Mother Witch that long, and I talked about it beforehand with Fireball being out for Clown. I was thinking maybe Magic Archer, but you see the skeleton dragons there with no great response for them, and then the Mother Witch, when she came out at the time that she did, creating such a huge problem. So good work here by Inthryl to take a look at what was off the board. And as we go here into our third and final game, take a look at the situation. Fireball, again, not available. So Inthryl going to go with the Barbs variation, I believe, of this Goblin Giant Sparky deck. And on the other side of thing, with arrows out, and this is actually a great pick from Clown, who's coming out with Delivery, one of the best spells you can use to counter against Sparky.
Yeah. I mean, this is a really, really fun matchup. When you look at what Clown's options are to take care of a Sparky, although it looks like he might not run into the Sparky version, we'll see if this is just the straight beatdown version. But at least in terms of taking care of what would have been a Sparky, he had a lot of great options. Still here, he has some good options. The ability to eat up that charge and distract a mini P.E.K.K.A, because a lot of times you'll see the Dark Prince and mini P.E.K.K.A together. That one Royal Recruit or Delivery coming down is nice to at least keep that at bay. We'll see how well that works throughout. I mean, this is just going to be a straight up minor control deck. So, you know, I have mixed feelings about minor control in high level competition. I obviously love seeing it, and there's exactly what we're talking about, Rich. That Royal Delivery does great work, and I feel like he almost got away with one there on that Dark Prince not connecting.
That was very close, and then you see immediately seeing the Delivery out of cycle. Clown now facing off against the Evolved Barbarians in that left-hand lane. And Inthryl just trying to pressure dramatically here. He's going to get the first big chunk of damage for him in game number 3.
I love that play, and I hate it when it happens to me. It's such a good high-level play. If your opponent is lacking in Elixir at all, or you know that their response is what their response will be and that it will bring them down to 0. For instance, like, you know, he probably knew that Clown was going to drop a Knight there plus a Log because it was the only two things he had. You can do so much damage with those aggressive Barbs in single Elixir. It is absolutely ridiculous what you can do with that one-time go around to get them evolved.
Slight lead here for Inthryl as we get closer to sudden death overtime. Clown's going to go ahead and pretty close to even things up with the minor play there, and now Inthryl getting the Barbs ahead of all these targets for that Inferno Tower. Let's see how Clown can clear the board and get that big burn involved.
Yeah, I'm curious what Clown's game plan is if Inthryl just starts cycling Barbs in the back every single time he gets them, right? They're going to run into the minor eventually. It's going to slow down your minor chip damage. It's going to create dual lane pressure every single time. And then also you're seeing how much work is happening in this left-hand lane, especially as we get deeper into double and into triple. The deck at the top of the screen is going to start to have a lot more power. This deck on the bottom of the screen is going to have to get a lot more innovative.
This feels like Rocket is the last card here, and he's going to start. He's just trying to play defense and get to a point where he can cycle some Rockets. We'll see if that actually is the case, but the little variation. We saw variation from Clown early once he realized that there was no way NATO was in this deck, and he's getting just enough chip damage from the miner to keep himself in a good spot. And now it's just about playing good, smart defense and making sure you win the spell battle at the end.
Yeah, and I also wonder if for Inthryl, he really needs to get the Barbs and the Goblin Giant in an opposite lane. You know, a lot of times you'll see a Goblin Giant plus in one side, and you'll see aggressive Evo Barbs out the other to kind of pull the attention away from that Inferno Tower. Nice hit here, down to 1309. Miner going to go in opposite lane, 1711. Good catch there. There's the Rocket, perfect Rocket Miner there to take the Dark Prince off the board, give the Miner some more damage. 1291, 1309. I don't know if Inthryl's game plan is going to work. We got 40 seconds to find out.
And you see Clown now, he's cycling these knights early. He wants to get another Evo Knight in late to be able to be powerful against some of these big-time pushes. Right now, it's cycle those Evo Knights, protect these Inferno Towers, make sure delivery is always ready when you need it, and get one more rocket down.
There we go. Goblin Giant at the bridge. Do Barbs come out opposite lane? High Inferno Tower here. No. Delivery comes down, cleans everything up. Inthryl is just going down the same lane over and over and over. 1102, 1086. Rocket in. That'll do it if nothing else exciting happens.
Fireball there. Ewa's trying to make room here. Can it get anything? Not gonna happen. 895 to 715. Clown controls the game brilliantly and takes our first full 3-game set.
Yeah, what a fun set that was. Really, really well played there by Clown. We had a great moment there from Inthryl in game number 2 to even things up with that Mother Witch, but that balloon in the pocket in game number 1, then you go all the way to game number 3, the patience. And honestly, I would love to hear someone like Boss, right? I know Boss is insane with Goblin Giant and Sparky. I would love to hear their thoughts on just going in the same lane over and over and over, because when you have to deal with Inferno Tower, one of the biggest things that you need to do is obviously make sure that Inferno Tower does not keep locking on your Goblin Giant. I don't really expect you to be able to get an Ewiz there when you look at the Goblins and you look at the delivery and all that, but the idea of going opposite lane with the Barbs, or going maybe Barbs behind Goblin Giant, then going opposite lane with the Dark Prince and the Mini P.E.K.K.A. I think it's probably better to go Mini P.E.K.K.A. Dark Prince behind the Goblin Giant, but either way, we needed some distraction on that Inferno, or we just needed to see a different offensive strategy from Inthryl. You know, we saw him split the Barbs early on and then kind of just go Goblin Giant in the left-hand lane. Let's hope something exciting happens. And we did see it break through a couple times. I just wanted to see something more. And I think that's why he ran into a brick wall.
Well, maybe he needed a little more urgency early in that match once it became clear that that was going to be Rocket as the last card and you were up against Rocket Cycle at the end, right? You need to have created that cushion. This is a game that was lost by under 200 HP, right? By one fireball, essentially. So you need to be creating that cushion early on in the game, focusing maybe on trying to get fireball value a bit more. It's not an easy situation, especially when you get to that stage that he was in. But yeah, and it's one of those ones where the likelihood of you getting past that Inferno Tower, if it's played properly, and we saw essentially Clown just play that perfectly most of the way through there on the back end, you're not going to really break through there. So finding other ways to get that early damage is key, and just wasn't able to do it. And in the end, Rocket Cycle wins out. Very nicely played by Clown.
Yeah, you know, as much as I really hate losing to Rocket Cycle, you do see how difficult it is to manage that game for as long as he did, and then be able to have that extra elixir when you know his opponent is hitting, you know, pedal to the metal, knowing if he has that elixir, that Rocket's going to come out and I'm going to lose the game. So I need to send everything I can at the bridge. One last-ditch effort you always get when you're going up against Rocket Cycle, and Kick Ash, Boom Clown, not Boom Clown, Clown was able to do a great job there. And here we go. Our first Magic Archer of the day meets our first Archer Queen of the day.
Oh, and having delivery in this is so wonderful for Sosa. That's a huge game changer in this matchup against that Archer Queen. And does that get the lineup? Just barely does. So Eigor with a really nice King Tower activation here against the Magic Archer. Good stuff early on from both of these players, as we see a former world champion and 2019 Team Liquid member Eigor up against world finalist this year and one of only 3 players to go 10-0 in the qualifiers yesterday for this event in Sosa.
Yeah, and an interesting pull here from Eigor. I mean, if there's one thing we can say about Eigor is he runs the decks that he wants to run no matter what the meta is, and you know what? He's usually pretty good with them, as that Prince connects on the left-hand side.
And we'll see if the Mega Knight is in this version of the deck. the Minor Prince Wall Breakers usually does have Mega Knight attached as well.
Yeah. Mega Knight arrows, Mega Knight zap. We'll see what it might be. Although with the Knight in there, the Evo Knight, it might just be a completely different look. And bottom of your screen, you know what you're running up against. You've seen this deck 100 times, maybe even 1,000.
Yeah, delivery isn't an interesting wrinkle in here, though. So nice pick from Sosa to get the delivery in the mix, and that's going to be his best cover on the Archer Queen besides the Evolved Knight when it's in cycle.
I'm wondering if he just swapped that in for a log, you know, just looking to maybe save the log for later. It feels like a misfire to not have the tornado.
And here we go, setting up there, and Mega Knight comes out here. Plus Inferno Tower, so really covering a lot of bases is Sosa, playing a very defensive version of Minor Wall Breakers.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great way to put it. With the delivery, the Inferno, and that Evo Knight in there, it doesn't seem like the Mega Knight plus Prince pileup seems as scary. Obviously, still going to be something that you're going to have to focus on. Delivery comes in, cleans up those Wall Breakers quite nicely, as Wall Breakers have to come out from Sosa to distract this Prince.
And nice King Tower activation. Evolved Knight does get one. It just stays on the board for so long. And I see a lot of people here in chat on YouTube, and I'm curious, which one do you prefer out of these two? This very interesting, very defensive Minor Wall Breakers deck from Sosa, or I believe it's the Luminary deck, this the Mega Knight Prince Minor Wall Breakers. If you had to go ahead and run one today, which one are you taking out into your ladder push?
Minor goes back in there. Eigor changing lanes quite a bit.
Wall Breakers right, and NATO has to be the play to hold on. And this is the interesting thing about running this version with the delivery instead of log, and also with the Inferno Tower instead of Bomb Tower, right? The cycle is a little bit slower, and you have to spend a little bit more on stopping Wall Breakers. And the NATO has to get more involved defensively, which means you are not getting those same lineups with the Magic Archer.
Yeah, the delivery definitely makes it a little more awkward just because it's a card that you don't really want to cycle, whereas if it was something like a log, you'd be much happier cycling it. And then for a tower, if Bomb Tower versus Inferno, just that extra elixir and how important it is for that Inferno to be on the board also makes it something that you don't really want to cycle that early on, whereas a lot of times, or not a lot of times, but sometimes you'll see players with this deck at the bottom of your screen, if they don't really know what they need to do at the moment and they know a big push is coming in, they can early cycle a Bomb Tower. That 5 elixir in this awkward cycle makes that just a little bit harder to pull off.
And you see the effect of the Evolved Knight there, that it stayed on so long. I mean, you might have seen a situation where Sosa would go for some Magic Archer lineup value on that right-hand lane, but he couldn't do it because the Evo Knight was just still on the board. So now you're going to see him try to go for a little Knight Magic Archer lineup, but then the Mega Knight comes out high. Makes this matchup very difficult for him to get that very important Magic Archer damage.
Yeah, I didn't love the timing on that to go Wall Breakers and immediately drop the Magic Archer behind. I would have loved to see him let his opponent respond a little bit as another Wall Breaker connects there on the left-hand side here from Eigor. And Eigor getting that tower all the way down. I just realized I was saying Sosa instead of Eigor like 3 times throughout this match. But that being said, Eigor does take it 9-19 to 10-31. Sosa doing, and this is what I was kind of getting to, is that Sosa switching lanes with that Minor as much as he did. It's tough. When you're playing Minor control, you got to make sure that that lane switch is exactly what you need to do, and you got to commit eventually. You see there how much damage was done on both sides from Sosa, and obviously, you know, you can't just run Wall Breakers into the same thing over and over, but not getting those Magic Archer lineups and obviously switching lanes with the Minor as much as he did just made it a little bit tougher to keep up with this heavier deck and the damage that came through, and also the fact that those Wall Breakers kept connecting.
This is a really great win for Eigor in game number 1 because look at the cards he loses. Yes, he loses Knight and Minor, 2 pretty central meta cards, but there's arrows being out. He has poison if he's concerned about Lava Hound. He also has Fireball, obviously. He has Log still available. And losing Prince, losing Mega Knight, losing minions, not really a big concern for him. So getting a win with that deck here in game number 1 leaves him with a lot of really good options. That makes it, this is a hard situation for Sosa trying to make a deck pick against Eigor for game 2.
It is tough because there's that part of Eigor that just goes, well, look what's available. I'm going to go Mortar Hog Rider because I can, and I'm good with both of those win conditions, and I'm going to win with it. And then the other part of it is, well, is it the same Eigor that we used to see? Is he going to maybe think a little bit more deeply about this matchup that's placed in front of him? I mean, I love what he did in game one. I really am happy with the cards that he picked. Just like you said, I think it leaves a lot open out there, and that's another part of this whole duel format is, you know, really trying to put a finger on what your opponent's going to pick, and Eigor has made that very difficult, as you said, for Sosa. I wouldn't be surprised if he did just go something like Mortar Hog Rider because it is available, and that is something that he would do. And also, when you're as good with those cards, why not? You know, sometimes you don't need to innovate that much, but we'll see. I do love that this is not a deck that I expected from Eigor in game number one, right? It's always hard to kind of, you know, predict what he's going to play, but then on the other side of it, he's a guy that it's pretty easy for us to kind of jump on for being predictable in these tournaments. So at least seeing a little bit different from him makes me happy.
You know, if you're on the other side of things, if you're Sosa here, you have to anticipate, more likely than not, you're assuming that Igor's running some sort of cycle deck, right? So you're putting NATO in there, you're trying to cover a lot of the cycle options. So then I'm wondering, hey, if I'm Eigor, I might go in a completely opposite direction. I would love to. I would love to see Eigor run Golem here. That would be a fascinating choice and one that would really run against type and would be a really solid way to counter snipe. I see for Instagram in our YouTube chat saying he's going to go Royal Giant. That's certainly a possibility. So with the Inferno Tower, that might concern me a little bit. And now we see Eigor going to what's most likely double bait.
Yeah, love to see it. Love watching Eigor play some bait.
And we do see in chat earlier when I asked about which one of those decks we would go with, longtime CRL pro Mini saying blindly go RG every single game. Let's go. That sounds about right.
Seems on brand. Yeah. Oh, interesting. I wonder if Igor's running that Mortar Skeleton King deck that has bait aspects. Fireball's usually in there. We'll find out.
And Sosa's in a lot of trouble in this moment. And you see the defensive wall breakers coming out. Exactly. And he's going to get the cannon cart on tower. And this was just trouble for Sosa from top to bottom.
Wow. You know what? That Miner plus Magic Archer, though, ended up doing really, really well for Sosa. He spent a lot. There's a lot on the board here. Those Spear Goblins behind, you got to either deal with them. And then if you do, obviously the Skeleton King becomes a little bit more threatening. And ends up being, I got to say, for how bad it looked for a second there, Rich, only being down about 600, could have been a lot worse after that Cannon Cart plus Mortar.
The 4 Elixir is the big concern, and Eigor, I would have been nice to see Eigor maybe go 2 lanes there, as he just gave all of that away to the Royal Delivery and completely sacrificed the advantage he had.
Yep, and that's, I mean, 100%. That's the one thing that you cannot do in that moment there, especially because this deck does have the ability to create so much pressure so quickly in both lanes. I find when I play this deck and I lose with it, one of the things that I do incorrectly is I just get focused on one lane. But the amount that you can do in the opposite lane for cheap is insane, and that is huge.
And you know, Mortar's going to get nowhere near the tower. Cannon Cart trying to defend, and Eigor might have to eat these wall breakers, and he's going to. Magic Archer behind the Evolved Knight, going to work on getting that Cannon Cart down low. Cannon Cart is so to create some pressure and get on the Magic Archer, though. And this is just some uncharacteristic slip-ups on both sides of the board here.
Yeah, it just feels like a little bit sloppy, you know? It just feels like a little bit like, have they both played these decks recently? Have they both played this matchup recently? The Cannon Cart from Eigor doing pretty good, you know, to take the care of those Magic Archers, which is something that Sosa, I feel like, needs to clean up just a little bit.
But Mortar's just not quite getting on tower from Eigor, and all it takes with that Evolved Mortar is one to get on tower, and this game gets changed very, very quickly.
So Sosa doing the right thing here and trying to protect his Magic Archer. Dark Goblin comes out for it, though, and Inferno cleans up that Mortar. Dark Goblin will need some attention, maybe some spears.
And defensive wall breakers one more time. And this time, Eigor no longer able to spend HP on the left-hand side. Has to put some defense there. And interesting, he goes ahead and gives a lot of value to that delivery, which in turn charges up his Skeleton King to make a press on the right-hand lane.
And that's a lot more of what he's going to want to do for the rest of this game. Even though that wall breaker, oh, wow, perfectly timed spears. That's a lot more of what he's going to want to do for the rest of this game. That dual lane pressure with this deck, the cannon cart and the mortar together, the skeleton barrel coming in to stack up the souls for the skeleton king, it becomes incredibly overwhelming. And you have to continue to keep up that dual lane pressure because your opponent is going to figure out a way, or they're going to crack the code to your defense if you keep doing the same thing over and over and over.
Oh, this might get... Oh, the wall breakers to split and just able to stop the Evolve Mortar from getting on tower. Sosa holding on, but the pressure from Eigor is mounting.
Cannon cart at the bridge. He should be back around to another mortar very, very soon. Miner gets picked up by those spears, or excuse me, by the Goblin Gang. Maybe another mortar comes down now? No.
I mean, Igor's ahead at the moment. Now it's just don't make a big mistake. You also have a big spell, and your opponent doesn't. So Eigor just focusing now on don't let miners get value, don't give up Magic Archer lineups on that left-hand lane or on either lane here, and make sure you win the Fireball battle at the end.
Yeah, and the Goblin Gang is such a elite card here for Eigor because there's absolutely no way to take care of that Goblin Gang if you are Sosa. There's no spell for it. Even if you NATO it away, the Stab Goblins can come back around, get on top. Eigor with a nice 2-0 win there. And, of course, he busts out Mortar in game number 2. Why wouldn't he?
Why wouldn't he? Mortar God will go ahead and get it done whenever he needs to. And yeah, it was kind of a slow play game, a couple of mistakes there for sure. But Eigor did what he needed to at the most, which was just get yourself a little bit of a lead, and then you know you can shut down these defenses. He managed the Magic Archers well in both games and comes out with a nice round 1 victory.
Yeah, I mean, that was really the biggest part of it, was making sure that Magic Archer didn't also become a win condition. And then, yeah, just riding that elixir out, right? You know, when you get deeper into double, into triple, the heavier deck is going to fare better. The wall breakers are going to become a lot less impactful as you get that far into the game. And then also the recognition. How does he take care of my Goblin Gang? He doesn't. So that's the only way he's getting damage on tower is NATO damage, log damage if he had it, which he didn't, and then, of course, miners coming in. So we are through our quarterfinals, which means we get a little bit of a look ahead at World Finals here, Rich. Ardent Toas and Mohamed Light, 2 World Finalists in our semis. On the other side of it, we got Clown/Kickash going up against a former world champion in Eigor. A great Final Four for our first day of Royale Masters. 2
world finalists who are both on the same side of the bracket overall for Worlds. So they would not meet in the second round, but if they're able to continue on winning, Mohamed Light and Ardent Toas could end up winning in the third round of our upper bracket semis. So certainly an interesting matchup for both of these two. And then, of course, the other side of it, Cloud and Eigor, both a whole lot of fun to watch. And we're not only going to have those 2 semifinals, we'll have our third place match and our overall championship to give away. A lot of prize pool today, and of course some critical points towards qualification for the grand final of this Royale Masters duels competition. And we're going to have all of that for you very soon. Don't go anywhere. We're taking a very short break. We'll be back with the semifinals here in just a couple of minutes. and welcome back to Royale Masters, the duel competition. Our very special Masters-style duel mode today has already been phenomenal, and now we have 4 more matches coming your way. Our top 4 players, semifinals, our 3rd place match, and our first champion of this Royale Masters season. Andrew, they are playing not just to qualify for our finals overall later this year, but there's some money on the line in these next few matches.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Royale Masters putting up a huge prize purse this year. $30,000 is our full prize pool. As you see right there, Open Qualifiers every time we do that. So go and follow along in their Discord on Twitter so you can see every time that you can join in. 6K going to be given away here today, along with a lot of points you can see in the bottom of your screen there. Those points really, really matter if you want to get through to playoffs and be there for that big time prize pool in about a month from now. So that means you got a lot of time to qualify, just as these players have done. Let's take a look at our bracket, because things started off pretty dominant, I would say, Rich, in that first round, as you'd expect in a round of 16. A lot of 2-0s there. But then even in our round of 8, we saw another set of basically all 2-0s. It was just Clown and Inthryl that gave us our only 3-set match of the day. Now, as we get into our final 4, 3rd place in our grand championship, I feel like we'll probably see a couple more sets go the distance.
Yeah, and it's interesting because this format, one of the advantages of this version of duel mode, right, where you only lose cards if you win a game, is it's supposed to give a slight advantage to the player playing from behind. We haven't seen that advantage very much today, but two things in mind. We're getting to the upper echelon of these games, so it could get very tight. And also, we're going to see some BO5 today, which is going to really change how this goes, where if you win the first 2 games, you have 16 cards you can't use, and your opponent is playing from behind, knowing you have a 16-card disadvantage. So that's going to get really fascinating when we see a best-of-5 match.
Yeah, and I really think one of the things about that best of 5 is that you really have to play those decks like what we just saw from Eigor in game number 1. You know, you really got to start throwing snowballs in and, you know, royal deliveries in instead of maybe logs and bar barrels. You've got to plan for the future, because the last thing you want is exactly what you're talking about. You go up 2-0, 16 cards are out, and you go, I can't build a deck that I'm good with here. I am really struggling, so I'm really excited for that best of 5. And, you know, I think coaching is a really, really big part of it. You know, I hate to feel, I hate for him to feel like we're piling on, but, you know, we go back to Ruben at the start of our day today, and it just felt like the decks that he brought to play just weren't really kind of up to snuff. I imagine what we're going to see in this first match of our semifinals between Ardent and Mohamed Light is basically what you want to see at the highest level gameplay. You want to see a little bit off meta, so you set yourself up in terms of that game number 3, but you also got to make sure that you're playing decks that are very, very popular right now, because you know the deck that you're going to run into is going to work synergistically. You know that the guy that you're playing against is going to be very, very well versed with this deck. I mean, this is a World Finals matchup we're seeing here on our first qualifier at Royale Masters, so here we go, man. This is a big one. Yeah,
a lot of fun. I'm super excited for it, and of course, you can get involved in the action as well. The link is in the description there on YouTube or discord.gg/RoyaleMasters MSTRS. You can sign up because, of course, this is one of many qualifiers for this season-long event as we go into fall and winter. So go ahead and check out the Discord for your chance to maybe be here next month or next time.
Mohamed Light, Sosa, and Ardent Toas were all 10-0 yesterday in qualifiers, and we see Mohamed Light go, oh, you want to drop that Inferno down in the opposite lane? Let me go Balloon there on the left-hand side, 2172 to 2 untouched towers, as Mo has a perfect set of barbs to distract this Inferno and create a little bit of counter push. He's going to bait out more elixir there from Ardent. Kind of frustrating for Ardent Toas.
Yeah, definitely not the start he was looking for here in a matchup where these decks do have very similar looks in lots of ways. So just a nice, easy Barbs play up against that Inferno Dragon. And you talk about it, it's not just that you counter the Inferno Dragon, but you talk about how it forces out for just 1 extra elixir, forces your opponent to make a play that doesn't manage his cycle maybe the way he wanted to.
So there you go. Minions to push that balloon. Fireball comes in to clean it all up. Pretty nice, but now you have to think about the fact that the balloon still gets a hit, and your opponent is back around to Evo'd Barbs. You don't have balloon. We'll see how he wants to defend.
And
Evo Barbs, you don't have Fireball, excuse me.
doesn't have, yeah, you don't have your Fireball. Evo Barbs come out, Inferno Dragon distracted and burned. That Inferno will easily work on your Lava Hound. Mohamed Light now does have to contend with this Loon, and the Tombstone does not pull the balloon, so he's forced to snowball as well. And he was hoping that Tombstone would do double duty in supporting the right-hand side and pulling the balloon. Doesn't get punished too much for it, but not exactly what he was looking for.
Yeah, that was a misplay. In case you guys have ever seen one from Mohamed Light, that's what it looks like right there. Doesn't take really any damage for it, which is pretty shocking. But just as you were talking about, Rich, this feels like a moment where Ardent might be able to capitalize. A perfectly placed Fireball. And, I mean, he's back to more than even because he's got an Inferno on the board. This is just really, really clean gameplay from the Pharaoh.
You know, there are not many... Oh, boy.
Yeah, the Fireball comes out, raged up Barbs here on the board. This is all bad, man.
Well, that is often the case, as we see when you're playing against the absolute GOAT. And what I was about to say was, you know, we don't see a lot of Mohamed Light misplays in his career, but that's not the first time we've seen him miss a balloon. And most famously, of course, the missed balloon pull against Mugi for our 2021 World Championship. The outcome here, of course, very different, as he quite easily recovers and takes the win against Ardent Toas. But, you know, if there's a crack in the armor for Mohamed Light, is it possibly the occasional balloon pull miss?
I was just gonna say every player has one, right? Was it Javi and Giant Skeletons? There's just some card out there that you just kind of hate, and Mohamed Light doesn't let that balloon push come in. You look there, only one balloon came out from Arden. You know, Mohamed Light was much more aggressive early on. We saw the naked balloon to start, then we saw the minions push the balloon, got fireballed, but the balloon's still connected. One of the best things about him is just creating situations that are so... like you have to react instantaneously, and then it leaves him available in the opposite lane, right? So we saw that. You get the balloon plus the minions push. The push is brilliant because not only does it speed the balloon up, a lot of times, unless you fireball that absolutely perfectly, you get what we saw, which is the minions go off the board, and the balloon kind of moves a little closer to your tower, right? But at the same time, now the most powerful card in his hand in the Evoed Barbs are now completely free to wreak havoc on the other side of the board. So just a really great game management there by Mo of the macro understanding of the matchup and the aggression early on. You know, we saw Arden be a lot more lava heavy and a lot less balloon active.
Yeah, very, very less balloon active. And when the balloon happened, it didn't quite happen as he'd envisioned. So he draws it up and doesn't get the result he'd hoped for. And now we go into game number 2. And again, as a reminder for everyone watching at home, Arden can play all those cards once again. Mohamed Light, though, has the disadvantage of not being able to use the cards that we just saw. So for Arden, he can go back to all of that. Mo, Lava out, Fireball out, Snowball gone, Inferno Dragon gone. So now Arden has some choices, right? What are you trying to abuse here? Are you trying to abuse the Fireball being out? We saw success against that earlier today. Are you trying to look at the Inferno Dragon being out? And it feels like when I'm looking at this construction of what's gone for Mohamed, that I would rather try to focus on either the Evo Barbs being gone and the Fireball being gone, knowing that there are some pretty good other answers that Mohamed Light likes to lean on if that Inferno Dragon's not available.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's not the most popular, but if Arden were to run a version of Fireball bait with recruits, I'd be into it. Obviously, that's not going to be what we're seeing because already Minor plus Wall Breakers comes out, as both those Wall Breakers are going to connect for a nice early start here for Arden. Mohamed Light playing the newest Evo in the game. We'll see how it fares.
And a slow start here for Mohamed as the pressure has come from Arden pretty heavily.
Yeah, and that's what Arden needs to do here, at least in single. Although they might just be running basically the same deck, except for Mo is going to be running the recruits version instead, as he sends out a good luck. And you're going to need it, because if we know one thing with Wall Breakers, I think Mo's the best in the world with them. We used to talk a lot about Morton being one of the best Wall Breakers cycle players out there, but when you look at what Mo's done with all the different versions of Wall Breakers plus Magic Archers, Spears, Bats, you know, Poisons, it seems like he's the guy to beat basically in every facet of this game.
And last time he ran this, he ran it with Fireball. Obviously, Fireball not available for Mohamed Light, having one last game with it. So, question whether he's running Poison here or something else as the spell support for this deck.
So instead, we see basically another mirror matchup. You know, looking at game 1 and game number 2, it's pretty fascinating when you talk about going down to a world finalist versus a world finalist, and they're basically running the exact same thing in both games.
And this is one of those kind of nightmare scenarios, right, where you're Ardent and you go, okay, well, I lost game 1, but Mo has a lot of stuff that's out for game 2. Let me go try to put him on a matchup, and then you end up mirror matching him. That's, I think, of all the results that Ardent was hoping for, this is one of the least.
Yeah, and, you know, this is just kind of like a what-if situation, but, you know, what if Ardent ran the version that was Magic Archer NATO instead, just because knowing that Fireball's out, Poison is just a little bit less quick to get on top of it. I don't know if it's a hindsight is 2020 situation, if Ardent would tell you I'd still rather play this deck, but it's at least something to think about, you know, when you talk about taking advantage of things that are unavailable. I mentioned Fireball Bait before the show, or I mean, before the game started. Not really the most popular deck in the game right now, even if there are versions of it, but Magic Archer NATO is still really effective.
And Ardent had some success earlier today running mirror matches, right? He dominated Hugo in the minor Xe mirror match that we saw earlier, and so far so good here for Ardent in this one, as long as that minor goes down and wall breakers don't connect. And a little charge from one of the recruits, but it is Ardent who does have the fairly solid damage lead as we go into sudden death.
Nice use of the bomb tower bomb there by Mo. 1407 to 1916. And yeah, with a mirror matchup and a 500 HP deficit, Mohamed Light is going to need some Royal recruits to get on top of that tower, or he's going to need at least one wall breaker to connect. I don't think that he can out minor chip him unless Ardent somehow just can't catch any
and just continuing to get poisons out early. And that's a big key for Ardent from this point forward, is just continue to stay ahead. You don't have to take a tower. You just have to keep your damage ahead of Mohamed Light's and get your poison down. Don't let Mo get poisons down before you get poisons down. Don't let him change the rhythm of this matchup. And right now it's working for Ardent.
And that's one of the biggest things I think about Clash Royale that we don't really talk about enough because we only cast at the highest level. But being able to continue to play that game of inches and not miles when that time is ticking down in that final 1 minute, that final 30 seconds is really important. Not losing your poise and starting to make weird plays because you're starting to feel the panic and the pressure of the time is really imperative. And now you can see Ardent already kind of slipping a little bit, right? The damage is already much closer than it should be considering where it was just moments ago. 705, 607, Mohamed Light back in the lead. Poison, Ardent's going to take that lead right back.
Well, he went defensive poison, so he opened the door. Wow! Unbelievable. He went defensive poison on the left-hand side of the bridge and opened the door for Mohamed Light to make it close. And once Mohamed Light made it close, and hopefully we get a replay of that finish there, once Mo made it close, it changed the entire rhythm from Ardent. It changed everything he wanted to do in every moment. And you see, we've talked about it before, we've made this quote 1,000 times, CRL 2018, Season 1, Hazard saying, mistakes beget mistakes. And even something as a macro mistake that really didn't, in the moment, cause a lot of huge problems, but that changed who was in control, changed the balance of control in the matchup, just completely let that slip through Ardent's fingers.
And that's exactly, it was almost as if it was the curse of the caster where you're talking about when you have a big lead and you were talking about all you need to do is maintain that lead. You're playing the exact same deck. You know this matchup. You know what you can and cannot do. You know how you need to defend. You know what cards have to be available. But somehow Mo just always seems to feel that pressure, make that mistake late game. That consistent gameplay from second 1 to the end of minute 4, it needs to be just as consistent in that final 60 seconds. And I think that's really one of the things that separates him in being the best player in the world is it's, you know, you look at these guys build pushes with 30 seconds left in a game and I'm like panicking for them. But in their mind, they're going, oh my gosh, I have 30 whole seconds. I can do so much with that time. And you watch the way that Mo manages late game, it's always just so brilliant. There's so much poise there. And Ardent, he just slipped up. I mean, he just did what everyone else in the world is going to do in that situation for the most part, which is feel the pressure, make the smallest mistake, like you said, Rich. It's almost intangible when it happens, and then the game's out the window.
Let's go ahead, take a look at those final moments that swung the game in a different direction. And So here we go. You see how much advantage Ardent Toas has right now. He's poisoning on offense, and this lead right now is huge. And Mo's just trying to stay in the game at the moment. The bomb tower comes out high, and this suddenly gets it down within 300, 250 or so. But Ardent expects that. He's still in a good spot. So here we go. 3-3 split with about 1:20 left. And Ardent goes 4-2 to the right and then poisons on defense. And this is what I was talking about. I understand why he poisoned on defense. He really wanted to take care of those bats, really wanted to take care of the recruits. But what he does is give the lead to Mo for a moment. This is a guy who was behind by 800 HP a few moments, just 30 seconds ago, and now is suddenly in the lead, and the rhythm of the match, Andrew, has completely changed.
Yeah, and when you look at that decision-making on that poison, you have Royal recruits coming up behind your Princess Tower, so you understand the urgency of maybe wanting to get something up high, just like you talked about, needing to take care of those bats. But the Spear Goblins come down up high to pull the units in. You've already played the poison, so it's like you're almost double dealing with the recruits on the left-hand side of the board. Whereas if you get those Spear Goblins just a little bit lower, you maybe sacrifice, I don't know, maybe just like one stab on your tower, as opposed to what set up a desperation bomb tower. You gave so much value to Mohamed Light's poison on the previous push. All things kind of came cascading, and just like you said, Rich, mistakes beget mistakes. And even though it was a small one, he really, really got punished for it.
So here we go, our other semifinal. Keep in mind, folks, that if you, in the third place match, third place gets $500, fourth place will get $300. You're guaranteed a minimum of $1,200 by making top two. So this is, at minimum, a $700 match, and maybe even a $900 match between Clown and Eigor here in our semifinals.
It's more than I've ever played for, or gotten paid for a game of Clash Royale.
It's very true, and honestly, I don't even want that kind of pressure.
I really don't either. I don't even like when I have one person spectating me.
So Clown going with the Remy Eli deck, it looks like. And up against this Drill Exy. And this is a very different Drill Exy than what we saw earlier today, and a really nice King Tower activation combination. You're going to get the King Tower involved, but find yourself down by about 4 elixir. And an aggressive play, a really aggressive play by Clown for that lineup early. We have seen how much trying to go Magic Archer in single elixir for a lineup like that can punish you. Saw Elsiop do it at World Finals one year. I think that was in 2020, and Eigor continuing to maintain a nice advantage.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where if you're not catching your opponent off guard, I mean, it's a real risk play. And you see Mohamed Light, again, I mean, we talk about him endlessly. He's one of the best in the world at doing it, of being hyper-aggressive with a Magic Archer and then not playing another one in a predictable spot for another 2 minutes. And then he goes aggressive at the bridge again. I get it in single to go for that aggressive play, but I just feel like against someone like Eigor, and especially this deck, you know that with that Executioner and the Drill, you know NATO's in there. It feels like a little bit of an over-aggressive play. Obviously, though, still not punished too much, as Clown is in the lead. And one more thing to talk about, Rich, with what you were talking about, as this Magic Archer also tries to line up but isn't as successful, is this version of this deck just makes so much more sense. You got the Ice Spirit and the Goblins in there instead of the Golden Knight and the Ewiz, right? It adds up. You have a building in there because you don't have a way to pull buildings, pull units into the center other than using your Drill and your NATO, and you don't want to use those defensively.
This is really going the wrong way for Eigor. He had the elixir advantage. He was down a little bit in damage, but he had the elixir advantage after the aggressive Magic Archer play early, but then didn't capitalize off it well. And I believe that one of those wall breakers, when he spent the Fireball on defense, ended up connecting. And now the Magic Archer getting great lineups on this left-hand lane. And this game, which seemed like Eigor had an okay handle on it, has completely run away from him.
I mean, it just got to the situation, especially on the left-hand side with that, not the most recent Magic Archer, but the one prior, where it was just like, this Magic Archer is going to line up and do its damage, and I'm going to ignore it and move on with the game. And you cannot do that, because with the coupling of the NATO, the amount of damage that can come in from one Magic Archer, if left unattended, is game-ending. And that's literally what we're seeing right now. It's so game-ending that you saw how aggressive Clown was able to get with that late NATO when his Magic Archer was already on the other side of the board tanking that Princess Tower.
But look at this right now. Good damage left-hand lane. still pretty far behind, but keep in mind that Clown and you're letting the spears get on there as well. I think we saw this from Eigor. He feels the game is over. He just decides to move along. You're playing a game where your opponent doesn't have a big spell to damage that tower. I feel like that was just Eigor kind of out of sorts from bell to bell. I mean, we saw the missed fireball in his last round. Just feels like is he playing in a cafe and he's trying to order at the same time? There are just a few things where it feels like the focus isn't quite there.
And this is one of the reasons why you and I have always given our good friend Eric Benemu a lot of credit. Eigor is a very unique and rock star, if you will, personality in the Clash Royale space. He does a lot of what he wants, when he wants, plays what he wants, shows up when he wants. And I think in this game, it is another one of those situations where I think if you have a coach yelling at you in your ear, get on that magic archer, send in the player, you did blah, 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 do something, get on top of that card, just more urgency. And then the idea of throwing away, not throwing away, but, hanging up the controller, if you will, or the phone for the final seconds, because the game is pretty much lost. But just like you're saying, man, it's not over yet. There's no big spell there. If you misplay a NATO or whatever, you don't have the spells available, all of a sudden you can really take advantage of those, the fact that deck doesn't have a big spell for a big pile-up push. Whatever it might be. We don't love to see it. We've never loved to see it out of him, but it's kind of become brand for Eigor.
It's on brand,
for better or for worse. Yeah.
It's definitely on brand. I mean, a lot of things are on brand for Eigor. Playing Mortar when he shouldn't, playing the same deck 4 times in a row. He's an enigmatic personality, which is part of his popularity as well. He's that wild and that good. You're talking about a guy who's top 3 ladder players of all time. Right? So not to mention the brilliant performance he had in 2019 in World Finals. And people forget that he was top 3 at CRL World Finals in 2021. People kind of just forgot that part of his career, that he was so phenomenal in 2021. So this is a guy who's brilliant, but who's finding himself in some tough spots. And the question is, can he buckle down and battle out of them against a guy like Clown, who is having arguably the best year of his career?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing about Eigor. I mean, you love him for it. As much as you want to pull your hair out sometimes, where you're just like, you're better than this. I know you are. But that's why he's still, to this day, years and years after his highest moment, one of my favorite players to watch. I'm always excited when he's in a tournament because of exactly what you're talking about, Rich. The ability that he actually has, but it comes with a lot of personality. We'll see if he can bounce back in game number 2.
Very interesting. Clown might be going Ram Rider here. And Eigor pulling out Mother Witch, Dark Prince, and looking at the cards that are out, I'm curious what Igor's trying to go matchup for wise with this Goblin Giant.
Yeah, I was going to say it looks very similar to the look that we saw with the Mother Witch coming in late before.
Royal Giant from Clown.
And yeah, RG from Clown, which, that Monk is going to be able to put in some good work against the Mother Witch and the minions. Also with this Goblin Giant, you can see pushing it back a little bit, so not the worst situation for Clown.
No, and he's not even worried about activating the ability here, and I think that's a big thing of maturity. You look at is, do you always feel the need to press that button, or do you have the patience to sometimes just let that be a 4 or 5 elixir card that gets played like normal with these champions? And that was a nice mature play by Clown.
It's definitely a button that's always fun to push. You always want to hit it, but not always the best decision. 29-12 to 29-46 for a nice slow start here, knowing the win conditions at hand. Probably going to be a much more interesting battle as we get into double elixir.
Oh, that's for sure. And again, you're seeing Clown play this very, very nice and very, very calm. Definitely knows that he doesn't want to overcommit against this deck. And here he goes. Now he starts to go in. The Electro Spirit doesn't get on the last minion. And this is going to get some good damage, but create a good opportunity the opposite direction.
Yeah, this is a great send here for Eigor, and we'll see. He does just decide to all pile up in the one lane and rage everything up. Fisherman cannot pull the Goblin Giant away, so this is a great push by Eigor.
Yeah, and that Dark Prince still alive too. So
Wow.
more expenditure from Clown is required. Phoenix will go into the egg behind all this. And that was really interesting from Clown. He went in with the Royal Giant really, really early and really aggressively at the bridge. You're playing Evo Royal Giant, but that first one going there, knowing the deck you're up against, it feels like that was just asking for a nasty counter push.
Yeah, agreed. And the fact that that one minion didn't get taken care of, it seems small, but it also just made that counter push come just that much more quickly and less damage coming in for Clown. 1290, 1651. Eigor setting up a big push once again. As that rage comes through, Goblin Giant will get on tower, and there is just not a great way for Clown to use his Fisherman right now to keep that Goblin Giant away.
Yeah, he's hesitant to use it defensively to go ahead and pull the Goblin Giant to the Prince to the King Tower, and this is gonna be some good damage, and this is why. It's because he wants that Fisherman offensively, and that's a lot of counter push.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. You got to use that Fish Boy to get the mini P.E.K.K.A. off of your Royal Giant if you want to get some good damage in. 489 to 1033, things swinging back in favor of Clown, and honestly, if Clown can slow play this, he should be in a good spot to take this game.
And now he has to use this Fisherman. He's going to go ahead and play it high, and no block from Eigor. Can he block now that the reset happened, and the Goblin Giant does get pulled?
Yeah, I mean, no Elixir comes out there from Eigor. Maybe the better decision, just because you saw he was getting kind of low in Elixir. If he sends it and it doesn't work, there's no way for him to defend a counter push, which is obviously probably a smarter play as we see what's happening now. But man, that was a tough one, a tough moment of patience for Eigor as he's trying to take the game now, building a push that he wants.
Fireball in 592, able to hold Ghost plus RG. Mini P.E.K.K.A. trying to get this Ghost out of the way in time. Rage on defense. RG does get the very important shot. Fireball will finish it. Clown just needs to get it out and get it down. GG. Well played.
Wow.
Clown 2-0s Eigor, and will face Mohamed Light in our grand final.
And this is why you and I were talking about Clown and why he was just an arm's reach away from being at World Finals. Great gameplay there against a former world champion. He did all things correctly, never got in his head about it, stuck through it, played really well through those matchups. And I just love to see that kind of maturity from a player like Clown, who obviously does not have quite as big of accolades as Eigor. And Rich, look at that matchup. I mean, we're only looking at 7 of 8. In 27 games, but you even go lower than that, and then you see that's where the advantage comes in, right? With 982, you get a 52-48. But really interesting there when you look at the 7 of 8 matchup.
Yeah, I mean, that certainly does make you feel like it's the direction for Eigor. And he nearly had it, right? He had a couple of moments where he put together some phenomenal pushes. But I think that 7 of 8, part of that 7 of 8 might be that this is the Monk variation, which isn't very popular right now. And that Monk variation is a lot better against the Mother Witch and minions here, and does allow for the other troops to help out against things like the Mini P.E.K.K.A. So maybe that was the big swing. But either way, a really nice performance by Clown. And, you know, we talk about him missing World Finals. Let's talk about how close he missed World Finals. He had 375 points overall. Air Surfer had 400. That's just a few wins. That's one more win in maybe one more win in a monthly final. That's a couple more wins. That's 5 wins overall over the course of the season in Swiss or group stage matches. He was in 9th place when the top 7 went through on points. That's how much of a great season he had. And now he's not going to CRL World Finals, but he is going to go and get a chance to show his level here against the GOAT in Mohamed Light when we get to our final.
Yeah, we obviously still have our 3rd place match. Let's take a look here at our bracket. The other thing, Rich, is the Monk is so good against Sparky. I mean, so many things about that deck from Clown, and it really does feel like Clown has given us some of the best gameplay we've seen today. Obviously, no surprise when you look at the other side of the bracket. You see Mohamed Light. Look at him. Well, he lost the game. Oh, no, he didn't lose a game. And he went 10-0 yesterday, and he does what he does. But you look at Clown, who's also had a very, very strong day. He's gone to 3 twice. We've seen him play very well in that 3rd game when he played against Inthryl. There he goes 2-0 against Eigor, and now we have our 3rd place matchup, which I don't know. I saw Ardent Toas down there already, so I don't know. Did it already get played, or am I?
You know what? We'll go ahead and we'll get more information on that here in just a moment, and it might be that we'll have our Ardent Eigor match coming up. It was a graphic error, so we will be getting that Ardent Igor matchup.
I was just sad we were going to miss it. Yeah.
Yeah, that would have made me a little sad as well. But we don't have to worry about it because we will end up seeing that great matchup. And we're also going to see a phenomenal matchup in our finals. We'll talk about this Clown versus Mohamed matchup in a few minutes because there is some interesting history there this year. But in front of us, we have Ardent Toas and Eigor. And the way they're playing today, I think it's really on Ardent Toas. Does he keep his head and play calm? Or does he get nervous here? And I'm going to give this like a 70-30 for Ardent against Eigor.
I think I agree because we also know how Eigor feels when he's not playing for gold, right? I know he's a guy that doesn't care for bronze, even though it comes with a lot of points, a lot of money, and still a lot of a lot of respect. But knowing him and knowing his mentality, losing a set 0-2, I feel like we might get a little bit more of Eigor of old, where he's like, all right, I'm going to run what I want to run. I don't care if it matches up well. And then for Ardent, this is a big moment, right? He just lost to Mo. He knows he's going to have to face him at World Finals. This is where you need to step up and do everything right because you look at what happened last year at World Finals, who played through the lower bracket, who won the entire competition. That could be anyone, and that's always something you have to think about as potential because you never knows what happened in round number 1. And while I'm talking, we've already seen a whole tower go down on the right-hand side, and good damage on the left, but the exact opposite of what I said needed to happen, and that's that Eigor is dominating early.
Yeah, it's an early blowout, and an early blowout with, again, cards that Igor's not going to care about for being parts of other decks. So Heal Spirit, Ram Rider, Lumberjack, you haven't really burned much here, and so now it's just get this thing under control and win it. He has gotten down to 13-30, so still some work to do, but wow. Eigor, a nice opening in game 1.
Yeah, and you know, I've seen it happen before, but there's very, very little chance that Ardent's able to take a tower and take this to a 2-tower game just because of his win condition, right? You know, the wall breakers are something that you know when they come, you know how to deal with them. You know, it's the thing where Eigor goes, all right, I probably need to save my Heal Spirit plus my Bar Barrel always just in case something happens. And then otherwise he gets to just kind of focus in the same lane, and he already showed that he can kind of dominate in the one lane game.
And some okay damage there on the right-hand side, and if he can get this Magic Archer off the board, this might be a little pressure. Knight does come down. Can he slot these wall breakers past the Evo Knight and get at least one? And he does so. Wow. Ardent making a case with Double Elixir on its way that he can stay in this one.
Again, it's one of those moments where I just kind of wonder with Igor's decision-making. Like, I think the idea there is that he was thinking that I can build a better counter push if I eat one of those wall breakers, which we're kind of seeing right now, but I just don't know if it's worth giving that much damage to your opponent, although that connection makes things a little bit different in this conversation.
Yeah, that's a pretty massive connection there, and with 40 seconds left, Ardent's going to have to spend quite a lot to try to get that tower down, which will leave him thirsting and in trouble with the elixir flowing in his opponent's favor. So here we go. Can he make a case for an extension of his life in game number 1? The split lane pressure is significant. Both wall breakers connect on the right-hand side.
Yeah.
Spears behind the bats, behind the recruits. Evo recruits down. 12 seconds left. Miner needs to get in there, I believe. He might just be trying to pressure with more damage-heavy troops, and this should be enough to get it done. Game number 1, gonna go for Eigor in this third-place match.
Yeah, and that's you can see there Ardent feeling pretty frustrated, and that becomes another interesting conversation about the mental battle because we do know that Ardent is an emotional player, so is Eigor. Eigor now coming off of a win, a pretty dominant, easy, early win, and now exactly what I said about Eigor kind of goes back to Ardent Toas of Ardent. Now, can you keep your poise? Can you figure out what you need to do here to bounce back? Because it feels like when you look at the way that Ardent reacted, it was more of a cycle conversation. He didn't like his opening hand. Eigor got lucky with interactions early, whatever it might be, because Ardent did a pretty good job there at the end. Just, you know, not how you want a game to start. And that's going to happen sometimes. That goes back to exactly what I said of you never know how quickly you can get sent to that lower bracket, and you really need to be able to put it together with your back against the wall.
And now we go into our second game here again. Fourth place gets $300. Third place walks away with $500. So a nice little $200 game between Eigor and Clown here. And I do like, you talk about the bounce back, I like the bounce back here from Eigor, who just came and played more aggressive, played more clean, and maybe a little bit more focused than we saw him for most of the day.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I think, you know, that 70-30 that we talked about going into game number 1, I'd probably flip it to 65-35 or even 70-30 now in Eigor's favor. Obviously, for people, they're like, oh, well, he has a game in hand. But if this was just a 1-of-1, I would still give Eigor the advantage because of that mental conversation. You know, just with what you're talking about, with the way that he came out in this game, it was with a new deck. And he played it the way that he's supposed to play it, as opposed to just going, all right, whatever, it's basically over, I don't care, I'm going to just play some, you know, minor mortar control, and we'll just have fun. So here we go. Game number 2, Ardent Toas fighting to stay alive for this third place matchup.
This might be Lava Loon from Ardent. You have the Ram Rider out, you have the Inferno Dragon out, and you have Fireball out, all for Eigor. And now a Fireball to clear the way for those minions. Interesting choice here from Ardent with a lot of cards no longer available.
Yeah, it feels like Eigor definitely going to the skies anytime you see Miner plus Flying Machine, usually coupled with Lava.
And having the Fireball.
Just as you were mentioning,
I
was going to say, just as you were mentioning earlier today, that Inferno Dragon is just kind of everywhere.
Here we go. I like this Lava Call out of Ardent Toas. You know that your opponent does not have a lot of the key counters, especially for the balloon portion of this one. And you're also betting that he's not going to be, and this is a nice sequence. That balloon's going to get on there, get a ton of damage early on, and you have the spell power to contend with everything coming the opposite direction. Very nicely played.
Exactly. Yeah, very, very nicely broken down, if I may say so myself. You should do this for a living. I really loved that push there from Ardent, and I also really like that exactly what you were saying there at the end, Rich, is the Fireball, the spell power to clean everything up. I love that he didn't pull it a little earlier, because there was an opportunity to throw that Fireball in, maybe get a little bit more tower damage, maybe deal with one of the ensuing troops, but instead makes the correct decision. Love to see it. 2370 to 1277. Ardent Toas swinging not only the damage in his favor, but also maybe the momentum here in game number 2.
Yeah, and that's a big one, the momentum going into game number 2. Now, this will be interesting because if we do go into game 3, we'll have Evo Knight out on both sides, Fireball out on both sides, and this really great deck opening for Lava Loon having been burned by Ardent. He cannot repeat this one more time. I'm very curious to see what he cooks up for a game 3, assuming he does hold on and get the win here.
Lava comes down here for Eigor. Flying Machine right behind. And that's a lot of value for a Fireball, but no Fireball in hand, so minions have to come out.
And there you go. Does finally get the Fireball down. Snowball to protect this Inferno Dragon to set up a little bit of a counter push. He might throw the Loon out here, but I think he's going to hold off for a second, as he might have overspent to defend that Inferno Dragon.
1651 to 650. About 1,000 HP in favor here of Ardent, as Eigor is trying to make something happen, but that Evo Knight tanking for that Flying Machine, really, really nice.
And you see the Evo Knight here, and this is one of the things, and I know that this is maybe a polarizing conversation, because Evos have their positives and negatives. The Evos that I like are the ones that create some fundamental changes in how you play the card, right? That aren't just the card being stronger, and nice sequence there for Ardent to get it done. What you see the value here, especially in this Lava Hound matchup, is when the Evo Knight is walking, that's when its shield is active, and it's able to do that really extra tankage. So it changes the Evo Knight from purely being this mini tank that you use to pick stuff up and maybe counter push a bit, to being a card that you want to have on the move rather than engaged in fights. And I like that it makes that change, and it kind of makes you rethink how you play the card. And I think that when you're talking about where Evos go from here on forward, that should kind of be one of the benchmarks. And yes, whether a individual card is too strong or not, balance notwithstanding, having a card where you kind of change the way you think about how it's played by the evolution makes that evolution more compelling to me.
And you can see there a 70-30 matchup, at least on paper. And I agree. I think one of the best things about the Evo Knight is exactly what you're talking about. And it's late game saving moments, which is what we saw there, right? You see the pile up of the Flying Machine, plus the skeleton dragons. In Clash Royale of old, if you didn't have a fireball in that moment, you pretty much would have just lost the game, because you would have had to spend the 3 elixir to kind of stop the bleeding with the knight, and then it would have gotten eaten alive by that push, and then the game would basically be over. So I do love that part of the Evo Knight being able to come in. If you've worked your Evos route correctly, you know what's coming down the lane, you put it down so that it's walking, and just like we saw Ardent, saves the game. You do it for 3 elixir instead of what would have probably been like 6 or 7, and then you can go right back into being on offense. So really great game number 2 as we're about to get into game number 3 here. This is the second to last matchup of the day. Remember, the last match is going to be a best of 5 between Clown and Mohamed Light. And if you guys want to be in the 3rd place match or in that grand finals match, you can see all the information on your screen at Royale Masters, Discord, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, wherever you're watching, wherever you're listening. That is where you need to go follow along if you want to be here in the competition.
And these bats doing their best to get on the Evo are on the Electro Dragon, and they don't. Lumberjack to control here and just pressure opposite lane from Eigor.
Yeah, and this is going to be the kind of the name of the game, I think, for Eigor here in single elixir, right? You don't want to overextend yourself and then not have a miner to take care of a pump, and there's the pump coming down. So, hopefully there's the miner. Great. Okay, I'm doing my job. Okay. And then the other part of it is I don't know why people do that. I don't know why they go to the back of the pump, Rich, because here's the thing. Obviously, the NATO pull, very, very obviously going to work and activate. But the problem is if you don't defend that miner and you go to the back there, it activates King Tower regardless of what your opponent does. And I just don't love giving that up for free.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they're making the calculation that getting the pump killed without the miner being caught is the more important of the 2 items. That's the only explanation I can think of, is that priority outweighs the problem of activating King Tower. But it's certainly one of those ones where I think that's a big matter for debate, and you and I both see the reason why.
So here we go. Ardent Toas taking this big beatdown deck and running with it. He knows that when you look at what your opponent has, bats plus spears, that's a NATO away from death, man. And there it is right there. NATO comes in, cleans everything up. Does go a little aggressive here at the bridge. Not sure if I love that play, but it definitely has more time to set up another send.
And you get a lot of value for that 4 elixir.
Yeah.
Defend the wall breakers and put a lot of damage the opposite direction. And the miner from Eigor just not quite there in time. And I think maybe this is part of that thought process, Andrew, because you now look at what Igor's doing is, I think he assumes that the King Tower is going to get activated eventually. So try to get that first one, and then just plan on getting poison, 3-way poison value on Princess, King, and Pump as you get later in the game. And again, it's when you're playing minor wall breakers, a King Tower activation in the first minute does feel problematic, but you're also up against a deck that if it gets too much elixir, gets really scary really, really fast.
Absolutely, especially against this deck with what we were just saying about the spears and the bats being able to get taken off the board so quickly, so easily. So, yeah, we'll see here, and you can see Ardent and Eigor continuing that game of chess over the pump as one hit comes in and a NATO brings that miner to King Tower. Ardent still having a nice elixir advantage. You can see recruits on the board, but a pump plus a golem as well here. 1478 to 2081. Eigor in trouble.
Bomb Tower setting up early, maybe even thinking about getting back to a second one to really control everything here. And the high poison. So now it's just, hey, I need to stop letting these pushes turn into real damage. But the Lumberjack escapes, forces out the miner on defense, and there just isn't much stopping this.
That's it. Yeah, and then you see the problem with the barbs piling up in the opposite lane, and that kind of goes back to what I was talking about in that Goblin Giant matchup before. I mean, you saw right there Ardent just go, look, I got to push in the left, I'm going to go Evoed barbs on the right. Whether it's an Inferno Tower or a Bomb Tower, obviously the interactions are different, but the idea is still the same, is one defense for the other. So if you're going up against the Bomb Tower, you want the Golem to cross the bridge first so that the barbs can go the opposite lane and create a ton of pressure and there's no splash damage. Conversely, if you're going against an Inferno Tower, barbs go in first and then the Goblin Giant and then the Golem in the opposite lane, because then you get the Inferno Sizzle soaked up. So really, really well played there by Ardent. And honestly, on paper, you can see that the matchup is basically dead even, and the way that it was played felt like it was far, far in favor of Ardent Toas.
Yeah, I mean, but that comes down to that idea of one card being different can change so many things, right? You're playing,
Yes.
you're playing against Sparky, and you're playing a Minor Wallbreakers deck. You're playing with Log Poison versus having the delivery in there, and that matchup is totally different, right? And that's one of the things we love about this game is how one card, especially talking about duels and the flexibility to make adjustments as time goes on, one card can make all the difference.
Yeah, and we saw right there, really, really great set there. Ardent able to put things together, which is honestly kind of what you hope if you look at where they're at in their careers, right? You know, obviously Eigor being a world champion, but isn't at World Finals this year. Ardent Toas is at World Finals. Now, he did get the golden ticket in the month that Mo didn't compete, but that's a whole different story. The real point of the story is that he's at World Finals. He needs to win this. He needs to get that third place spot if he already went up against Mo. Let's take a look at the bracket here to remind you guys maybe exactly what I am talking about, in the sense of if you're on the same side of the bracket as Mohamed Light, you're going to run into him probably 99% of the time. And if you do, you're going to win that maybe 30% of the time. So if you're Ardent Toas, I'm not upset with where I'm at today. He did exactly what you expect. He came out, he won 2-0, he won 2-0, and then he went up against Mo. He got sent to third place, and then he won 2-1. That's a great day for him. Same thing for Eigor with what you were talking about in 2021, right? People forget how successful he really was because it was overshadowed by a completely different conversation in Mugi and Mo. And then now we get to our finals, and a guy that we have both talked about, obviously, with his points, Clown, very exceptional gameplay today, all throughout the year in 2023, now going up against the GOAT in the finals.
And, you know, Clown is one of those guys who has had Mo's number on occasion this year. You know, there was a slight period of time this late summer where Mohamed Light wasn't at his best. You know, there was the month where he didn't, where he forgot to come and participate in our monthly finals, and then the next month where he found himself losing to Samuel Basoto twice in the monthly finals, and that there was a time period there where maybe his eye was off the ball a little bit, some other things going on, some travel happening, and Clown was playing for Hype Boys in the Queso Cup Teams Edition, which was the worst team in the league by far, and ended up leading them to a win over Cal Pugans, over the Mohamed Light team, by carrying them, and specifically by beating Mohamed Light a couple of times. And he was doing that not just in Queso Cup, but outside of Queso Cup. So this is a matchup here where, yes, you obviously give the overall value to Mohamed Light in this matchup, but if there's anyone who's on the docket for this year who has something to say against Mohamed Light, Clown's on that very short list.
And already, Rich, we're seeing a really exciting game number one when you look at the Evo that's at play, right? Oh, wow, it's the Evo'd Firecracker. Haven't seen her much at all. Oh, it's a Valkyrie. Oh, it's a Snowball instead of arrows or logs. So already thinking about the potential of the best of five and being strong in that fifth game, both these players, right? On the other side of it, you look at Clown. Haven't seen a lot of Bandit, AQ, or Heal Spirit today. You know this is most likely going to be that Overwhelm beatdown deck, or it's going to be the Three Musketeers version, right? And as of right now, that Archer Queen putting in work.
Yeah, that was a huge Archer Queen. Now Hog opposite direction, but keep in mind, Clown has nothing for this Hog. He doesn't have a NATO, doesn't have a Fisherman, and apparently no building as well. So Clown just has to go ahead and eat those Hog shots. Mohamed Light wants to get Hog damage early before this gets too deep into double and triple.
Yeah, I mean, and this is another situation where Mohamed Light and those Firecrackers is going to be a really, really pesky thing to deal with if you're Clown. You can see right now he can go hyper aggressive early on. He protects the Firecracker, and there's no spell power. You just have to keep spending on it, Rich, and that is going to be where Mohamed Light wins or loses this game.
That was a really, really nice sequence from Mo to defend that Firecracker, create the pressure, but can he hold on against these Archer Queens, which have been huge? The rage to keep her in the game, forcing more expenditure out, and not catching the damage. 431 on the left-hand side. Clown in a big lead as we go into double.
I gotta say, I love what both of these guys are doing. They're anticipating what their opponent is going to do, and they're capitalizing on it, and we're seeing a lot of damage in both directions. And this isn't a one-sided conversation of, oh, wow, look at what Mo's doing. We saw what he did with the Firecracker there, and then just as quickly, we saw Clown come back with a great aggressive push to get that tower down to the lowest on the board, 431 to 578, building out, so a sped up battle ram comes down, and that battle ram will connect.
That's great. That's a great timing on the rage out of Clown. Just a measured level of gameplay. a lot of people don't get. And look at this. As the Hog goes in, he goes Pocket Bandit, sneaks past.
Magic Archer at the bridge. Oh, yep. And this, I love it, because he does exactly what he's supposed to do. He sacrifices the tower, he goes Bandit in the pocket, he baits out a Valkyrie, he goes Magic Archer at the bridge, Mo puts down those goblins, and this is what high-level Clash Royale looks at. No play you make is safe. Everything is trying to get you, and both these guys playing exceptionally well. 756, though, to an untouched Princess Tower on the other side. Mohamed Light going uphill for the rest of this game.
This is going to be a lot of damage from this Hog, though. The snowball resetting. Firecracker gets some damage in there. Hog's going to take a couple of shots. Let's see how Mo's able to defend against this fairly full board.
698, 2040. Valkyrie being a great pull for Mohamed Light. Haven't seen a lot of her lately. She's doing really well against those recruits. Nice kite there from the Hog, but this Bandit unattended, at least for the moment.
And there you see he hardly has to worry about those pocket bandits. Mohamed Light, though, defensive Hog Rider goes coast to coast. And that's going to be, I think we're going to see more of that. Now, again, gets the pressure down at the bridge, putting the Valkyrie on the ice skates. That's huge. Snowball in, Valk spinning.
Valkyrie's hitting the
Hog
tower.
going.
That's it.
Wow. What a game. What a finish. This is what you love in our best of 5 championship match.
Man, what can that guy not do? He's able to hang in it for blow the entire time. And then you go into the 2-tower game, and remember, untouched was the tower that just fell from Mohamed Light there, taking it from Clown. And literally all it was, Rich, was just really smart defending. And then it became as simple as Valkyrie, Hog, Firecracker. 1, 2, 3, send it down the lane again. 1, 2, 3, game is over. No way to stop it, no way to pull it, no way to knock it back. Beautiful stuff.
Just wow. And Clown did just about everything right there. And it's, you know, you have to wonder what could have been done differently. And maybe if I go back and go piece by piece, there's some horse to the barn syndrome at some point, and he got a little aggressive at the end and opened up opportunities for those big counter pushes. The Valkyrie getting on tower with the Hog was absolutely massive. And again, one of the things we talk about that makes Mohamed Light great is knowing when to pump the brakes and knowing when to put the pedal to the metal. And that's what we saw exactly right there at the end.
I mean, yeah, let's actually take a look at some replays so I can collect my thoughts on what I want to say about the end of that game. So here we go, 578, 431. This makes a lot of sense, right? Both these guys have been playing really well. They've been going blow for blow, and now we see Clown kind of go aggressive here to try to take the tower. Light going to do everything he can here to defend. We see a perfectly timed battle ram. You see the Heal Spirit come in right after, charges up the battle ram, charges up the AQ, and then the Rage. Absolutely perfect send. But this is where I start to have trouble, Rich, and it's exactly what you said, horse to the barn syndrome. Do you need to win the game right now, or can you win it in 70 seconds? Well, and I think you can win it in 70 seconds.
The hard part is Mo had shown that stopping the Hog Riders was not really going to happen. And I think that's what that maybe Clown was feeling here, was he knew Hogs were going to get there. Now, did that specific bandit need to be played right there? Was the sequencing and prediction just a bit off because you have to know the goblins are coming down there to pick it up? I think there were some problems there, but I think that Clown started to feel the pressure of knowing he couldn't stop Hog Riders. So, yes, some horse to the barn, and some knowing that he probably couldn't just defend the whole way out. And now you're stuck in a hard place where what decision do you make here against the best in the business?
I would have just loved to see him kind of do what he did in Single More, which is get those recruits down and get some dual lane pressure going, because the 3-crown conversation is real when you have that deck. You can create that much damage. I would have just loved to see either just more of the play the game that you've been playing for the last couple minutes and trying to control the board, or conversely, don't overspend on your offenses over and over, because you, just like you said, Rich, you can't stop that Hog Rider. So what do you need to do? Pile up recruits at the bridge, get a bandit down low, get an AQ on top of it, and then kind of thrive when you have your counter push.
Yeah, the pocket bandit, you know, going back to that well again, was an interesting choice. You know, maybe a pocket AQ might have been the move at some point. So, you know, that's in the past. Here we are in the present. And keep in mind, folks, this is a best of 5. Mohamed Light cannot play the 8 cards you see on the bottom left-hand side, goes to Golem, and Clown making a really good call, getting the Inferno Tower in the mix in game number 2, knowing how much Mo has gone to Golem.
Yeah, and he should have EQ, right? He should also have Earthquake in this deck to be able to deal with those pumps. So could be a really nice pull here from Clown. And then, of course, the other thing, what's the last thing you want as a Golem player? A lot of opposite lane pressure that makes it so you can't build the pushes that you want.
NATO out of cycle, well timed by Clown to pressure the opposite lane, get a couple of key early shots from that Hog Rider. Keep in mind, though, that King Tower activation is going to cut the overall Hog damage down by a 40 to 60% over the course of this game.
And the Evoed Firecracker, I really do like the choice that Clown made here. He's got all the right pieces to give himself a good shot, and that's really all you can ask for when you're playing against the best in the business.
And that was an interesting moment there as you see the Bar Barrel has to come out against that Evo Firecracker, which meant that the Goblins couldn't be predicted. Nice work for Clown, as Mohamed Light now will have NATO if he wants it, and decides instead to save it and set up for his next Golem push to the right-hand side.
Yeah, and I think I like what he did there, because he's cycling the E-Dragon early, which is one of the biggest, most crucial parts of his offensive push, but also it's stunning and slowing, right? So we see that the tower still stands, and then he can get back to another E-Dragon here if necessary. Instead, he goes Phoenix over the top. Phoenix going to get tanked for by the Knight, and then Phoenix going to tank for the Golem, and then Golem going to tank for the Egg. So a nice sequence there by Mo.
And there you see, this time, has a good downhill push, so he uses the NATO to make sure that Hog does not get the easy tower kill. Is he back around to it yet? No, he's not. Going to take at least 1, maybe 2. He does take 2.
Wow.
Trying to take this tower on the right-hand side. 124 left-hand lane, and that's not going to be enough. GG, well played.
Great.
We're all tied up after 2.
I mean, what a great game number 2. It went exactly the way... I mean, look at the time. Everyone look at the time. How much time's left? 2 full minutes of overtime. That's when you need to win that game with Hog Rider. We saw how dirty, how messy that last defense got for Clown there. Got really scary, right? If that goes on for another 30 seconds, I think Mo wins that game. Great play, great recognition. Also by Mohamed Light. Look at what card was not played. Well, it's because of the other card that was basically not played. The Earthquake came in as the last card to take the tower, but because of that, this was a 7-card game. And when this is a 7-card game, obviously the heavier deck is going to have the more awkward cycle, and you have one of your best tools not able to be played. So that's another really interesting thing here. While the matchup is only 57, whatever it was, 43, you saw if you went down to 6 of 8 cards, it was a lot more in favor of Clown. I love that deck pool. I love it. It's exactly what you said, Rich. He's been playing a lot of Golem lately. How do I beat Golem? Let me show you this Hog deck.
And go ahead, go copy deck too. That's the same deck that Mohamed Light played in game number 1. So
yeah,
another little bit mind games there by Clown. And now we get to the really interesting meat and potatoes of why I love this version of Royale Masters. Because keep in mind, folks, this is a best of 5. So we're going to now a minimum of 4 games. So the winner of this next game is going to have 16 cards out, whereas the loser will only have 8 cards out. And now we start getting into the interesting stuff of how much does that advantage come into play. And at the moment, we're seeing a nice rebound from Clown. So let's talk a little bit, Andrew, about what they both have out. And it's the exact same 8 cards. Mohamed Light winning with that Hog, EQ, Inferno Tower deck, and then same thing happening for Clown, which in some ways negates a little bit of that play.
Yeah, well, what's really interesting is Mohamed Light still has a lot of his favorite things at his disposal, right? He still has minor wall breakers, right? He still has Royal Giant. He hasn't played a lot of that today. He can still go to the skies. And the other thing, Rich, is now he can run back the exact same deck without the exact same worries, right? Even if you don't have to worry about, you know, opposite lane pressure, because that can still happen with a wall breakers deck, you don't have to worry about Earthquake. And that is really the thing that makes that matchup so much more difficult, because now you can pump a little bit more freely and a poison or fireball or miner comes out and you're just you're having a different elixir conversation, right? Especially as that game gets deeper on. So I think that's one thing that is something that, you know, Clown's gonna have to think about is, what if Mo just runs the exact same thing back now? I don't have that great matchup.
No Earthquake and no Inferno Tower. So Inferno Dragon much more susceptible to the NATO Electro Dragon plays. But looks like not going to run it back here as Mohamed Light goes to Skeleton Dragons.
Yeah, looks like Mo's going to go to the skies. Could be something else. Could be a graveyard version, but we'll see. It's obviously a lot less popular.
You better hope it's not graveyard against Skeleton King and Mother Witch.
Yeah.
And Pump kind of negates that idea.
Yeah, I mean, is he just? I think maybe he's just going to another version of Golem, right? I mean, what else do you ever really see Pump in?
Oh,
it's Three Musketeers.
Yeah, and this is interesting. I love seeing 3M here. 3M E-Barbs out of Mohamed Light is insanity.
This is what we play this game for. We love to see it. Damage stacking up there. Rage going to come down. Not really going to get much out of that Rage, unfortunately, for Mo, as 18-19 is his lowest tower and a pretty unhealthy Pump. Nice start here for Clown.
I was talking about this the other day with Juicy and Minnie, where this is a deck that I objectively hate. This 3M Pump deck with E-Barbs. I think I hate everything about it, and if I face this on ladder, I'd be absolutely raging. But this, Golem, all the decks that I really hate, I totally love seeing them in competitive play. Because it's not just you're randomly matching up with me and the coin flip, hope you go your way. You're analyzing your opponent, making a choice, and yeah, easy choice there from Clown to fireball that away. This is the kind of situation where I love seeing 3M Pump.
Yeah, me too. And honestly, man, I love the way that Clown is playing. I wish for him, I hope for him to be at World Finals next year, because the way that he's playing all throughout today, if he can just be consistent, right? That's kind of the key word of being at that highest level. The gameplay that he has, the deck choices, the macro and micro understandings, he's just a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, no, he certainly is. And again, so close to making it this year. If a couple of things go different throughout the course of the year, he's in. And that's Clash Royale for you, folks. And here we go. You see the Evo Knight on its feet, moving, able to tank a lot of that damage, get those Skelly Dragons deep into enemy territory.
And now the Mother Witch going to pile some up here, getting about the most that she can from the cards that are at disposal for Mohamed Light. And continuing to pile up. Nice Rage there, but now we see the Evoed Barbs opposite lane with only 4 Elixir in hand. How is Mo going to deal with this?
And keep in mind that that's the only spell, is the Rage from Mohamed Light. So defensively, as long as Clown doesn't overextend and is able to control, he can pull stuff to the middle all he wants. It's just about not getting too far behind on Elixir, not overextending against this deck that's designed to take advantage of that when it happens.
And continue to cycle those Skeleton Kings in the back and just start stacking Mother Witches, right? 3-card cycle, no big spell, one of the most annoying cards in the game. She does decent damage. Get more of her on the board.
And here we go. Gang not going to get in front of the Skeleton Dragons. Rage takes care of business, but look at the damage here on the left-hand lane. That tower
massive.
Now way down, and Clown has blown this thing wide open.
And there you go. It was because of the Mother Witch, and now another one comes down. That Knight had to go way up high to get on top of that Mother Witch behind that big push, which means that Miner was able to do all that he needed down low. 727, 1511. We've seen Mo come back from something like this before, but Clown is playing very, very nice right now. Maybe Barbs, right-hand side. There they are.
And there you go. E-Barbs to defend the left-hand lane. Heal Spirit keeps them up just a little bit longer, but you have Evolved Barbarians plus Gang on the right-hand lane.
Oh, wow.
And that's a very early defensive Rage. Pressure left-hand lane. Pressure right-hand lane. Mo trying to hold on. And Clown takes the 2-1 lead and has match point.
And this is exactly what you were just talking about, that Clown has kind of had Mo's number, which is in and of itself a big, big accomplishment to even be known as a person that might have his number. After you look at these games, you look at the decks that he came out with in games 2 and games 3, look at the numbers. Look at those matchup numbers. Yes, the sample size is small. Yes, it's less than 100 games combined, but you look at the matchup in game 2, you look at the matchup in game number 3, and that is some great X-manship.
Yeah, I mean, really, really great work from Clown. And now, this is where Jebus earns his money with Mohamed Light, right? Because, again, keep in mind, we're in Royale Masters format. Mohamed Light cannot play the Hog EQ Inferno Tower deck or any of those cards, but Clown has much more restrictions. He cannot play those 8 cards, plus the 8 we just saw. So, Fireball out, EQ out, Snowball out, the Evolved Barbarians,
Barbs out,
right?
Miner out.
So this is a big question, right? If you're on the side of Mohamed Light and Jebba's, you still see that NATO is available. You still see that Poison is available. So you see some likely options there. But we did see Clown run Miner Rocket Cycle earlier. But Miner's now out. So I am really I don't know where Clown goes from here. Lightning, Rocket, Poison, the big spells.
I think if you're Clown and you want to lean into the meta, you go Sparky or Goblin Giant. I think if you want to go away from the meta, maybe you go Royal Giant, right? You still have all the pieces you need for Royal Giant for the most part. Obviously, you can't run the Mother Witch version of it, but you've got, Evo Knight instead of Barbs if you want. You've got Royal Ghost, you've got Fisherman, you've got Lightning if you want it. So there's some potential there to build a Royal Giant deck. And then for Mohamed Light, I wonder, does he now go with Fireball out, Earthquake out? Is there a way to abuse the fact that your opponent probably needs to go Poison for their big spell, right? Is there a way to take advantage of that? Because the other option is that he goes like Lightning or Rocket, which is pretty unlikely. So is there a way to take advantage of that spell being out there? And if it isn't Poison, it ends up being a small spell like Arrows, then how do you take advantage of that? So that's kind of what I'm thinking if I'm Mo, and it looks like maybe he just goes either 3M again or Big Beatdown.
Well, and again, the two things to keep in mind is as we see one of those cards, Arrows and Log both still available, so a lot of small, like spammy options, bait, that kind of stuff, really not on the table for him with those being so likely. So Mohamed is going to run it right back and go to 3M.
Yeah, I mean... We'll see. I mean, 3M, like you said, I definitely love to see it, but that last game, if I'm Mohamed Light, I didn't feel great about the way it went. Although, nice start here.
Great start here. Well, I mean, look, he sees a big opportunity, and one of the big ones, you talk about Poison being the viable option. With Fireball being out, he can play those middle three Musketeers with impunity, right? He is no longer concerned about that play. And now here we go. He pumps up. We'll see if Clown is going to Poison this, right? He can't Miner this. He can't Fireball this. Can't EQ this. And he's playing Drill.
So he has to have Fireball, you would think.
He can't.
Right? But he doesn't. So that means he has, what, Poison, I guess? Poison Drill? But then that seems odd, so maybe it has to be Arrows.
Maybe he's playing Delivery to really shut down the defense.
Yeah, and he's just going for just small spells. We'll see. Nice rage here from Mo once again. Gonna bait out that Knight. Now the Knight Evo'd has very, very little legs to stand on. Should be very easy to clean up here with maybe just a Royal Ghost, and there it is.
And Mother Witch, a real problem, and I like Mo. I like this change here.
Yeah, I took the words out of my mouth.
Putting that Mother Witch in, you know that it can't be fireballed off. You talked about, again, abusing Fireball being gone. Skeleton Dragons didn't do the same thing, and now getting Mother Witch in this matchup against the Goblin Drill is really nice for him.
Yeah, because you think about taking care of that Mother Witch, and all of a sudden, you might find yourself going, oh man, I was too worried about the pump and not enough about the Mother Witch, or I was too worried about the Mother Witch and not the pump, and that becomes a really, really difficult thing, because both of those cards change the entire flow of the game. And Rich, you called it. He does end up going Rocket, and that doesn't feel like a good situation to be in if you're Clown. If I'm looking at the way that this game unfolds, I have no idea how Clown is going to be able to defend these pushes.
Yeah, and it's an interesting choice here because you're playing Goblin Drill, and you're playing this Rocket NATO. Against 3M, you want to be able to feel comfortable NATOing all three of those to one side and then hitting them with the Rocket. But Mo playing behind King Tower, and Clown doesn't want to activate that King Tower, so that creates a challenge for him as well. Now, keep in mind, we are in the same situation as last game, where Mohamed Light cannot win this by spell power alone. He does have to break through, so Clown now has 2 minutes to make a case. Does he NATO this to one side? And he doesn't. He NATOs it back.
He sure tried to, but did not get what he wanted out of it, and now Mohamed Light, one of the best in the business at going dual lane pressure. Musketeer on tower. We're going to game number 5. Exactly what you want in a best of 5 in Royale Masters format. Rich, I love it. I'm here for it.
This is exactly why I love this duel mode for best of 5s. It's so fun. It's so cool. And man, now we get into the real weeds of these deck conversations, because you have a lot of central meta stuff that's out for Clown. Mohamed Light, what are the key things he loses here? He loses Mother Witch, Rage, Royal Ghost, and Knight.
Pump. I will say Pump, kind of, just because of how good he is with Golem. But yeah, it feels like a very small situation in terms of all of the grander cards that are at play. I think he could go. I mean, he still has Miner, right? He still has Miner and Wall Breakers, and he still has Magic Archer, and he still has NATO. So that's one thing that he can do very, very well. Other side of it is that he could just run Minor Poison Control if he wants. He still has a lot of good buildings at his disposal. Wow, that was a fascinating game, and I'm so this is the part of the broadcast that you and I are the most excited about, and the people listening are like, what are these idiots talking about? Because we're gonna just go through like 32 different cards and just speculate. So where are you at? That's where I'm at least with Mo right now. I would love to see him go relatively predictable, but it's comfort. It's strong here in game number 5.
The interesting thing about going Minor here is that NATO is still in, as we just saw for Clown. Right, so NATO log, like he has a lot of pieces. He has Bomb Tower, has NATO, has a lot of things that are the stuff you want against Minor Wall Breakers, right? So that does get a little bit concerning. Not to mention that I believe he still has Evo Knight for Clown, right? Because he didn't win. I'm trying to look through.
Yes.
He still has Evo Knight.
Yeah. He's only won with the Barbs and the Firecracker.
Right. So. That does concern me a little bit. NATO being there, Knight being there, Bomb Tower being there. I don't know. Yeah. He's been playing so well in the beatdown realm. Poison and Delivery are both still there, so that means that makes me not like Lava Hound here. Man, I don't know. This is
RG
so hard.
Lightning for Clown, maybe? I don't know. And then there's Mo going Wall Breaker. Yep. So at least that part of it feels predictable. And then maybe Clown goes to the skies with Tombstone, or he goes GY.
Well,
and there we go.
There you have your answer. Very interesting. Snowball and Rage out as... Snowball, EQ, and Rage out as the spells for Mohamed. And Zap in this one for Clown is really interesting because he doesn't have Minor available.
Yeah, the Zap gonna do a decent job.
Oh, this is maybe Bridge
obviously
Spam
against
instead?
the Bats and the Spears.
This might be a Ram Rider deck then if he's running. Oh no, there's the balloon. All right, color me wrong.
He's gonna push the loon. No Spears, no Bats. Fireball comes out. Nice send here on the opposite lane. Tombstone ready to go. Bats clean up the balloon. 24-25, 29-94. Mohamed Light in the lead here in game number 5. Grand Finals, money on the line, points on the line. This is our first qualifier, as you guys see on the right-hand side. A couple more coming your way that you could be involved in.
I mean, Zap will be nice against the Bats, but then what does he do about the Spears?
Yeah, Minor him, and that does not seem like a great way to go.
He doesn't have Minor. He played Minor and he already won with Minor, right? So.
Oh, sorry, I was thinking of Mo. Yeah. I honestly, I guess then you try to zap the Spears and you take care of the Bats with your minions.
Minions will get a little bit of damage on the right-hand lane. Mohamed Light out to the early lead, 20-82. But Clown making his case on the right-hand side, 23-44, as we're just a few seconds away from double Elixir.
Bats out of cycle, which means you can save the zap for the Spears, but obviously this deck comes around so very quickly.
Yay, it's Andrew on Twitch saying, good deck string from Mo's team. He had 3 chances to win a pump game and get to play comfort decks in game 5.
Yep. It's a great call. And double wall breaker connection once again. When you talk about comfort, this is not the situation you want to be in. Mohamed Light playing a deck that he has proven he's one of the best in the world with in game number 5, when you are probably trying to just put something together with odds and ends. And great timing, sequencing, everything there. Balloon going to come in. Zap still available? No, it's not. And that balloon will get 1 shot. Does it get a second?
Yeah, it will.
Oh, it does. The zap comes in, Rich. That's massive. And a minion's on the tower. And the bomb goes off. Holy!
That was such a beautiful sequence from Clown. And that should be enough to get it done here. Mohamed Light, not enough time to make the counterplay. And once again, as he's done many times this year, Clown plays foil to the Pharaoh and gets a big-time win over Mohamed Light.
I cannot say enough great things about that set. Not only did we get the best in the world doing what he does best, and you even hear in the chat, I think that's a really, really great point that you make. He was really setting himself up to play comfort in the final game. And, you know, I called it kind of, at least, you know, I was thinking Magic Archer NATO, but still wall breakers plus miner in some version. And Clown continued to set himself up. Rich, look at the matchups again. All 3 games that we saw Clown win, those numbers were monumentally in his favor. Who's his coach? He needs a raise. I love it.
I mean, this was really, really nicely played. And you look at this, right? I was sitting there going, why is the Zap in a non-minor version of Lavaloon? But Mo, what does he play? He plays minor wall breakers a bunch, and even before recruits, liked to play the Bat Spears version as opposed to the Remy Eli version. So you have the arrows there for the spears, you have also the backup from the minions, and then you have the Zap to clear the bats, and they just barely got there in time to clear off that last chunk of spears and get that big, very important piece of damage. So, look, this was a game of milliseconds, of tiny little pieces, and the milliseconds ended up favoring Clown for a big win. And again, this has been the best year, I think, of his career, and I'm really excited that we've had a chance to watch it.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at the poise, again, the decksmanship, the mental fortitude of losing to Mohamed Light and bouncing back, going into a game 5 against the best in the world, the best to ever play this game, playing one of the decks that he's the most comfortable with, and you're able to come out on top. My hat's off to you. Round of applause. Beautiful stuff. I absolutely love it. You know, all year I was talking about how excited I am for Royale Masters to come back, Rich, and day 1 did not disappoint.
Yeah, no, this has been exactly what we want from this competition. And as Andrew said, day 1 didn't disappoint. Let's look at the replay here at the end. We'll talk more about why day 1 is so important here. But this is this final sequence. Mohamed Light ahead. He gets this wall breakers connection. That's a ton of damage under 1,000 HP. But Andrew, talk us through this brilliant sequence counterplaying from Clown.
I mean, the timing, too, of this knight coming across the bridge makes it so that all those pups become a huge threat. So what do you have to do? Well, we have to spell the pups off the board, not the balloon. And so what does that mean? That little bit of window gives you time to get back around to the Zap. So it all actually comes back to the knight staying alive, crossing the bridge, tanking for the pups, pulling that fireball out down low so that you can get that balloon a clear shot on through to the tower. You wondered where the Zap was. Where's the Zap? Where's the Zap? Well, it's going to come in at the exact right, as you said, millisecond, stun the tower, take care of the defensive units, get that bomb drop in. GG, well played. The first best of 5 in the books on the year.
Yeah.
Love it. Love to see it.
Yeah, you gotta love it. And the patience there from Clown, too, to not play that Zap early and let the minions take care of the bats, play the Zap on the spears. Just brilliant work. After a day of tons of sweeps, we get a full 5-game set, 5-game match from Clown and Mohamed Light, and a brilliant start to our Royale Masters season. And again, let's keep in mind, brilliant start to this Royale Masters season, because we are at the front end. This is Open Qualifier number 1. We have multiple Open Qualifiers coming throughout the season. Let's go ahead and run the format so we can just tell everybody about how they can participate here by going to discord.gg/RoyaleMSTRS, Royale Masters. Andrew, you kick things off with these multiple Open Qualifiers.
That's right. 1 is in the books, but we got more. They're 2-day events, and there are a lot more coming over the next few weeks to end this competition in a month. As you guys can see, best of 3, single elimination, although the finals are best of 5. And let's say you're not doing good in the Open Qualifiers. Well, you do have a last-ditch effort for that wild card open. And then when you finally get to those playoffs, you can see right here, double elimination. Every elimination match will be best of 5. It's all going to be in our favorite Royale Masters duel mode, and you can be there. You can be in the competition. You can join in. You can play against the best in the world. And honestly, in my opinion, and don't get mad at me, the best format also.
It's a really,
I know you won't get mad at me.
It's really fun, especially when we get into the BO5s like we saw today, back and forth, coming from behind, so much fun, and you can be a part of it. Go to discord.gg/RoyaleMasters, MSTRS. You can follow them at Royale Masters on social media, and of course, subscribe to this channel so you make sure you don't miss any of it. Hopefully, we'll see you back here next time, either as a competitor or as a viewer, and we'll be here for all of it, for everybody here at Royale Masters. That's Andrew Guy. I'm Rich Slayton. Thanks to Tasty in the booth and everyone at Royale Masters for making this possible. We'll see you back here next time for more fantastic Clash Royale.
Breathe it.